Hey, let's go over every single episode of Dragon Ball Z, from the Saiyan arc all the way to the Buu arc, with a fact or more for each one. But before we begin, be sure to leave a like and a comment. There's a new hype system on YouTube, and those interactions are more important than ever. Thanks as always for your support. But anyways,
let's do this! Full power!
Episode 1. The first episode of Dragon Ball Z was originally intended to be episode 154 of the original Dragon Ball, but Akira Toriyama's first editor, Kazuhiko Torishima, was dissatisfied with the anime, so he brought in some new production staff and decided to rebrand the series. Thankfully, it was a good point to split things off, with Goku now being a father and about to be revealed to be an alien. A huge paradigm shift all around. One of the original titles chosen before Z was Gohan's Big Adventure, but this was changed once Toriyama insisted that Goku was still the main character, suggesting Dragon Ball Z instead. Not only did it sound cool, but Z represented the end of the story. But the name of Gohan's Big Adventure made it as far as having scripts and art with that name on it, with some of the other names considered being New Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball 2, Dragon Ball Wonder Boy, and Dragon Ball 90. Episode 2. In the original Shonen Jump version of the manga, Gohan says that he's 3 years old, only for Toriyama to retcon this the very next chapter, by having him be 4 years old. This change followed suit in the anime and every other reprint of the manga afterwards. Episode 3. The first Dragon Ball Z movie, Dead Zone, takes inspiration from the Raditz encounter for its storyline, with Gohan being kidnapped, Piccolo and Goku teaming up, Gohan raging out and saving his father, even the dialogue between the two fighters once Goku realizes that Piccolo wears weighted clothing. This idea of remixing plots from the main story into something new would be something done for nearly every Z movie going forward. Episode 4. When Piccolo gets his arm blown off by Raditz, his blood is shown as red. Later on in this same arc, it will be changed to purple. Episode 5. This is the first episode to feature Vegeta and Nappa, both wearing very different colors from what we're used to, often referred to as Arlia Vegeta. This episode aired on May 1989, and it wouldn't be until the next month where Vegeta would get his official colors in the manga. So Toei just had to guess, and guess they did. This color palette was corrected once Vegeta gets to Earth, and it's completely recolored in Kai. Well, Vegeta was. Nappa kept his wrongly colored armor. This is also the first time Super Saiyan is mentioned, as Nappa says Saiyan hybrids are something of a Super Saiyan, so not really the same meaning we're used to. Episode 6. How long Snake Way is depends on the language you watch the show in. In Japanese, Snake Way is 1 million kilometers, or a little over 621,000 miles. In the Z-dub, however, it's said to be much shorter, at just 10,000 miles. This was corrected in Kai. Actually, after recording this, I realized that the Oni says 1,000,000 miles.
Snake Way is about 1,000,000 miles from end to end.
1,000,000 miles?!
Which is equal to 1,609,344 kilometers, meaning that Goku, well, in the dub of Kai at least, had to run for longer. Episode 7. The title page for the chapter this episode is adapting, chapter 207, depicts Gohan as Sun Wukong, the hero from Journey to the West, a historical Chinese novel from the 16th century. This same Gohan appears in the first ending, riding atop of Shenron. Also, while researching this episode, I found out that the dub calls this character Tien's mom in the credits. She is in no way related to Tien in the original, but funny enough, Linda Young, the voice of the Triclops woman, is the real-life mother of Tien's English voice actor, John Berkmere. Episode 8. For some reason, the anime adaptation cuts out Bulma reading the Z Fighter's power level across the world, using Raditz's scouter. Yamcha is 177, Tien is 250, and Piccolo 329. Instead, she only reads Krillin and Roshi's like in the manga, 206 and 139. Plus, it adds a filler scene of Turtle's power level being 0.001. Because of her use of the scouter in this episode, the cover of the storyboards featured Bulma wearing Raditz's armor. Episode 9. This is the first fully filler episode of Dragon Ball Z, and one of my personal favorites. Gohan befriends a cranky robot and slowly gains courage. In the Dragon Ball GT Perfect Files Volume 2, Masako Nozawa, Gohan and Goku's Japanese voice actress, explained that this is her favorite episode voicing Gohan, saying, "I love the story of little Gohan and the robot. The performers were just me, as Gohan, and the actor playing the robot. And it was the first time I'd done something like that in anime. So apparently, there were opinions to the effect of, 2 characters won't carry the episode, maybe we should can it. But the anime staff said it will absolutely be alright. So the TV network said, in that case, let's give it a shot. Then, after it aired, we got lots of letters saying it was amazingly good, and I was moved. Episode 10. This episode establishes Yamcha's career as a baseball player for the team the Titans, a misspelling of Titans. The Dragon Ball Z anime special guide mentions that this was Akira Toriyama's idea, and that he sent a memo regarding Yamcha's feelings after getting into a fight with Bulma, moving out of West City, and becoming a baseball player, since the manga didn't show where any of the other fighters were prior to training at Kami's Lookout. This would also be one of the few filler things carried over into Super, where Yamcha leads Universe 7 in a baseball game against Universe 6. Episode 11. This episode is largely filler, and focuses on Vegeta and Nappa destroying planet Arlia. The names of the important characters for this race come from lost and ancient civilizations, with King Atla, Atlantis, Lemlia, Lemuria, and King Moai coming from the Moai statues of Easter Island. Episode 12. Similar to Yamcha, it was Toriyama's idea to show what Tien had been up to before going to Kami's Lookout, showing him living with Launch and her chasing after him. This was set up at the end of the Piccolo Jr. arc in the manga, but never followed up, as Launch more or less disappears from the manga. Toriyama later revealed in an interview prior to Battle of Gods that, though Launch and Tien lived together for a bit, Tien was only really interested in farming and martial arts, not romance. So she left, but visits from time to time. Also, Chaozu got rich, thanks to farmers hiring him for his telekinetic abilities. Episode 13. The scene where Launch tries to climb Korin Tower and runs into Upa and Bora was also Toriyama's idea, with him redesigning Upa specifically for this filler. He wouldn't show up again until episode 285 of the anime. Toriyama also had a bunch of ideas for Goku's adventures along Snake Way, including his travels through Hell, Princess Snake, and him eating clouds. Episode 14. There's an animation error while Piccolo meditates and causes the wind to blow Gohan away, where Gohan's tail magically returns, despite Piccolo having cut it just a few episodes prior. Episode 15. This episode shows Ox King visiting Chi-Chi as she's locked herself away in Grandpa Gohan's home, as she mourns Gohan's kidnapping and Goku's death. It looks like Goku's house has been built right next to Grandpa Gohan's, which is an entirely filler invention. We actually don't see Goku's home in the manga until chapter 310, but we don't even really get a good look at it until the Cell arc, where it sits by the foot of a river and looks completely different. In fact, the last time we ever see Grandpa Gohan's home in the manga is when Goku returns to it after the first arc, gets his stuff, and leaves for Kame House. Episode 16. This one is also entirely filler, but gives Gohan a great moment of growth. He finds his way back to his family's home, but chooses to turn around and continue his journey, showing just how much he's matured. Interestingly, this is one of the first times the anime shows Gohan making a decision entirely on his own, without Piccolo or anyone else guiding him. He reaffirms his mission to Piccolo, cementing his path forward. Episode 17. This episode shows the Pendulum Room, an entirely filler creation at Kami's Lookout. That's effectively a mind time machine. This marks the first time Planet Vegeta is depicted in any media, with the red skies later informing its design for the Bardock special. We don't see much of the Z Fighters training in the manga, and although the Saiyans are much weaker than Nappa and Raditz, they reinforce the Z Fighters' commitment to the cause. Episode 18. This episode has a filler section where Gohan regrows his tail and transforms into an Ozaru once more. But since Piccolo destroyed the moon already, the explanation this time is that Goku's old space pod displayed a stand-in for the moon. But the pod is on an island nowhere near Mount Paozu, where Grandpa Gohan actually found Goku. And because Piccolo destroys the pod, when Dr. Briefs has to get the pod later to make the capsule ship, he has to rebuild it from scraps, unlike the manga where it's still intact. Episode 19. This is where Goku's training with King Kai begins. King Kai is voiced by Joji Yanami, who was also the narrator, while he's voiced by Sean Schemmel, Goku's voice, in English. Despite having invented the Kaioken, King Kai himself can't use it. This is also where we meet Bubbles, King Kai's pet monkey, who was inspired by Michael Jackson's own pet monkey of the same name. Episode 20. The backstory of the Saiyans taking over Planet Plant comes from Toriyama himself, despite it being filler. The name Planet Plant is mentioned in Toriyama's notes, but wouldn't be established until Dragon Ball GT and Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans. King Kai telling Goku this backstory contradicts some later events, like telling him that Saiyans turn into Ozaru, which Goku is later shocked by when Vegeta does it. The insert song, Battle Colored Warriors, is used during the flashback, one of the rare instances of DBZ using a vocal theme. Episode 21. This is the first episode to make use of the Dead Zone soundtrack by Shunsuke Kikuchi in the original Japanese. Unlike the first Dragon Ball anime, where he made music packages specifically for the show, Dragon Ball Z ramped up the production of the movies so much so that Kikuchi would score them and then that music would be reused in the show. He only made 2 sets of music specifically for the anime, and the rest came from the movies. For example, the Ginyu Force battle theme is originally the theme that plays when Garlic Jr. attacks Goku and Piccolo. Episode 22. This episode is the first time Namekians are mentioned, and Piccolo's origin is revealed. Although Toriyama didn't envision Piccolo as an alien at first, once he came up with Kami, he began to plant seeds for their origin. Back in the Piccolo Jr. arc, Piccolo and Kami communicate in Namekian, and Yamcha even jokes that Kami must be an alien, while he possesses a human. We know now, thanks to Daima, that Namekians originate from the Demon Realm, but fled and spread throughout different planets in Universe 6 and 7. Episode 23. This episode shows the first death of Yamcha and his iconic pose. It's been memed to death in many different series, and even shows up again in the baseball episode of Dragon Ball Super. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, Yamcha can get his revenge by kicking the Cyberman back at Nappa for a dramatic finish. Episode 24. The anime adds flashback scenes of Chaozu and Tien with a little pig creature. This is Ino Shikacho, a dangerous creature Roshi and Master Shen raced together when they were young. He appeared in episode 82 of the original show, a filler episode before the 22nd World Tournament, which introduces Tien and Chaozu earlier than in the manga, where they use Ino Shikacho to scam different villages. Episode 25. The multiform technique Piccolo and Krillin use in this episode is exclusive to the anime. We never see either of them use it in the manga, though the idea of Piccolo splitting in two and fighting himself from episode 15 came from Toriyama. Piccolo uses it again when he's controlled by Garlic Jr., when he trains in the Time Chamber, and in Dragon Ball Super when he fights Frost. Episode 26. This episode ends with a beautiful painterly image of Goku racing towards the battlefield. These kinds of stills are known as harmony cells, rare, high-quality frames, where the character isn't painted on the animation cell itself, just the outlines, and instead, they're colored directly into the background. This gives them a soft, watercolor-like effect. Dragon Ball Z has plenty of these. Episode 27. In this episode, Goku gets to the lookout and instantly jumps on the Nimbus to get to the battlefield, but is too late to save Piccolo. Things get a little weird when, later on, Mr. Popo takes Bulma all the way to Yanzabit Heights, on the whole other side of the planet in just a matter of seconds, using his flying carpet. I guess Mr. Popo really didn't want to help. Also, Nappa's attack he uses to kill Piccolo is called a few different things, but its most persistent name is the Deluxe Bomber, aka Episode 28. This episode is the origin of the "It's over 9,000" meme. The original English version that got popular was from Brian Drummond's delivery in the Ocean dub, and is in fact a mistranslation of the original, over 8,000. When it came time to redub the show for Kai, Vegeta's modern voice, Christopher Sabat, recorded 2 versions, one with the over 8,000 correction for home video, and another with over 9,000 for the TV broadcast.
It's over 9,000! What? 9,000? It's over 8,000! 8,000?
Plus, if it really was over 9,000, Goku would have been able to match and even surpass Vegeta's power level of 18,000 with just Kaioken times 2. Episode 29. In this episode, Goku promises Gohan that they will go fishing after all of this is over, but they won't get time to rest for a long time. Between Goku going to the hospital, Namek, Yardrat, training, and the androids, Goku wouldn't be able to fulfill his promise until episode 169. Episode 30. This is the beginning of the incredible Goku vs Vegeta battle, and the showcase of their iconic poses, which they've used a number of times since then. They would get a rematch in exactly 200 episodes, with Majin Vegeta vs Super Saiyan 2 Goku happening in episode 230. Episode 31. The artificial moon, or power ball, is introduced in this episode, a technique where a Saiyan uses some of their own power to release a stand-in for the moon, which emits blitz waves. In order for the Saiyan to transform into a great ape, they must receive 17 million Zeno units. No relation. When the power ball mixes with the oxygen in the atmosphere, it bursts, opens, and mixes into a moon. For some reason, the Ocean Dub decided to say that Goku's father was the inventor of this.
Your father was an average fighter, Kakarot, but he was a brilliant scientist!
But no, Bardock wasn't a scientist. Episode 32. In this episode, Goku realizes that the monster who killed Grandpa Gohan was himself. Grandpa Gohan faced Ozaru Goku at least one more time before his death, as he warned Goku to never stare at the full moon. Goku followed that rule until he had to pee one night. So he went outside and transformed, killing Grandpa Gohan in the process. Although never stated in the series itself, Akira Toriyama's very first description of Goku in Birdland Press 15 mentions that Grandpa Gohan died 2 years before the series began. But if Grandpa Gohan hadn't died, I'm sure he would have enjoyed this video and would have considered supporting the channel by either becoming a member or joining the Patreon, where you can watch videos like this and others early, along with other neat perks. I hope you're enjoying the video, and thank you to anyone who considers this. Back to the facts. Episode 33. Although Goku is the first person to create a spirit bomb in the show, he is not the one who actually uses it on Vegeta. Instead, Krillin gets that privilege. But this wouldn't be the only time Krillin would use it, as this scene would inform Krillin's moveset in Super Sonic Warriors, a game where Krillin gets taught the spirit bomb and the Kaioken by Goku, and ends up saving the world. Episode 34. The next episode preview for this episode, which was shown at the end of episode 33, shows the spirit bomb as looking completely different. Rather than the usual blue glow, it has a black core, likely because it was unfinished. Also in Japanese, Gohan yells out Kamehameha while very clearly using the Masenko. Episode 35. Goku begs Krillin to let Vegeta go so he may face him again one day. This was actually never supposed to happen. Toriyama envisioned Vegeta as any other villain who would die at the end of the arc. In fact, he didn't even really like him. But Vegeta got extremely popular, so he created Frieza to replace him as the next big bad guy to die. So, if anything, Goku begging Krillin was the audience begging Toriyama. As he explained in an interview, Vegeta was a nasty guy at first in this serialization, and I thought about bringing an end to his story as just a villain. But as I was writing, I felt that his villainous, sort of warped straightforwardness was unexpectedly interesting. Episode 36. The anime adds a touching scene which was not in the manga, of Krillin noticing Bulma silently crying as they fly away from the battle site. It's heartbreaking. It also adds a scene where, once they find out about Namek, the team valiantly point forward. This isn't really a scene in the manga, and is instead taken from the cover of the chapter this episode is adapting, 243. Episode 37. The hospital Goku and the others are treated at is called Wukong Hospital, located in West City. It's a pretty obvious reference to Son Wukong, the legendary Monkey King from Journey to the West, and the very character Goku was based on. In fact, Goku's full name, Son Goku, is simply the Japanese reading of Son Wukong's name. Episode 38. While Gohan is recovering in the hospital, there's a cameo from a fox boy in a wheelchair who seems to be Konkichi, a filler character from Dragon Ball episode 83. Konkichi was a thief who tried to steal a plane ticket for Goku, only to end up roped into a bank robbery by a gang of thugs. After Goku helped clear his name, Konkichi promised to change his ways and become a teacher. While researching this, I also found out that before Mario, Nintendo had a separate mascot named Konkichi, a monkey-tailed alien boy who starred in instructional comics. He's very clearly inspired by Goku and even Irelia with that hat on. Not really a Dragon Ball fact per se, but I thought it was curious. Episode 39. Bulma's outfit in this episode is a direct reference to Ripley from the first Alien movie, where she spends the end of the film in just the panties and a tank top. Also, years before Superhero, Gohan fires his very first special beam cannon during image training with Krillin. Episode 40. This filler episode establishes Goku's fear for needles for the very first time, something that would come up in future episodes and is often referenced in the fandom. Also, Qui is established earlier than in the manga as a legitimate threat, and our first real glimpse at the Frieza Force's ruthless planet colonization. In the manga, Qui just shows up, makes fun of Vegeta, and dies. Episode 41. It's very rare for filler characters to appear in Dragon Ball video games, but the events and characters of this filler arc of fake Namek, along with the orphan spaceship, have actually appeared in Dragon Ball Z2, Gekishin Frieza, a card-based RPG for the Super Famicom. But what we really need is Sakrom in Sparking Zero. Episode 42. The healing chamber Vegeta recovers inside of is inspired by the Bacta tank, which first appeared in The Empire Strikes Back. Toriyama was a pretty big Star Wars fan. The anime and manga What If Story episode of Bardock revealed that the liquid inside the chamber was originally invented by the natives of Planet Plant prior to being taken over by the Saiyans and annexed by Frieza. Episode 43. In the manga, Vegeta tells the doctor that he no longer needs the scouter, and just leaves it behind, only to have it out of nowhere again once he reaches Namek. The anime actually fixes this, by adding a scene where Vegeta runs back to get his scouter after finding out that Frieza is after the Namekian Dragon Balls. Episode 44. This episode is our first proper introduction to Frieza and his army. In the Dragon Ball Super manga, it's revealed that the Frieza Force team that was sent to Namek was only a small selection of men, as it was a secret mission. The team was gathered together by Zarbon and Dodoria on Frieza Planet 79, around the same time the battle between Goku and Vegeta was coming to an end. Episode 45. The team escape fake Namek and make it to their destination, where they're attacked by two Frieza Force scouts. Although they're never named in the anime or the manga, their names are Banan and Sui, names that were first revealed in Goku Gekitoden, with Banan being the basis for the stock Frieza soldier in the Tenkaichi games. Episode 46. This is the last time Goku rides the Flying Nimbus in Dragon Ball Z, outside of Gohan's imagination when he's terrified of Goku getting stuck in Ginyu's body. The Nimbus would be passed down to Gohan, and in the Kanzenman release of the manga, we see the Nimbus one last time, as Goku gives it to Oob. But of course, in Dragon Ball Super, it makes a couple of cameos as well. Episode 47. When the Namekian warriors arrive, they send a Frieza soldier flying. He is then kicked into the ocean and killed by Zarbon. This soldier is Cranberry, a character who, in the Dragon Ball Super manga, is shown to be revived by the wish to bring back those killed by the Frieza Force. He would go on to get arrested by the Galactic Patrol, but eventually helps the wizard Moro escape, and begin his plan to use the Namekian Dragon Balls to gain his magic back. But he's ultimately betrayed and killed once more. Episode 48. Probably in order to keep Frieza's power and mysticism a secret for a little bit longer, Cargo, Dende's brother, is killed by Dodoria in the anime, instead of Frieza like in the manga. Episode 49. Despite the fact that we know Vegeta as the Saiyan Prince, this is never mentioned until this very episode, since Toriyama didn't actually plan him to be a prince at the start. He is only ever referred to as either an elite or a noble, but not specifically a prince. But the English dub, of course, had the benefit of hindsight, so they call him a prince earlier on. Episode 50. The elder Vegeta killed in this episode is named Zuno. Him and his whole village are the only ones not brought back after the wish to revive those killed, because he was killed by Vegeta and not Frieza. Zuno was actually the one next in line to become the Grand Elder, but after his death, Murray was chosen in his place. In the Super manga, Vegeta tries to atone for the destruction of this very village by defending the Namekians from Moro. Episode 51. This episode marks the only time ever where Goku talks to Chaozu in the Z anime, and even then it's indirect. Goku is just happy for Chaozu as he got a new body in the afterlife. In the manga, that's pretty much it, though in the anime, Kid Goku did meet Tien and Chaozu early, and kinda talks at Chaozu once in the Inoshika-cho filler, but even then he barely acknowledges the little guy. Episode 52. This is the first episode since the beginning of Dragon Ball Z to not have Gohan appear at all. At this point in time, Gohan is with Bulma while Krillin and Dende go off to the Grand Elders. As we see in the next episode, he's just kinda meditating. Episode 53. The anime leaves out a crucial detail of Zarbon revealing to Vegeta that Frieza can also transform, something he does tell him in the manga. This means that later on, when Vegeta faces Frieza, the prince just magically knows that Frieza can transform. Episode 54. The absolutely goated Frieza soldier Apul is split into two different characters in the anime, Apul himself and Orlan. While in the manga, Apul goes to find the village Vegeta attacked and reports back to Frieza. This role is instead given to Orlan, who is then killed by Frieza for killing the last survivor who could have known what Vegeta did with the Dragon Ball. Apul goes on to help Zarbon find villages and is eventually killed by Vegeta after he recovers. In the manga, Orlan doesn't exist at all, but ever since then he's been a skin for Apul in many Dragon Ball video games. Episode 55. Although Yamcha is the big baseball star, this episode shows that Tien and Chiaotzu are also fans, and quite good at the game, since they go through Gregory's test as if they were in the middle of a baseball match. Gregory himself is also one of the most prominent filler characters in all of Dragon Ball. Not only was he designed by Toriyama, but he's been one of the few anime-only characters to make it into the manga. He appears in Chapter 2 of Yo Son Goku and His Friends Return, and in the table of contents for Dragon Ball Super Volume 21. Episode 56. When Gohan gets to the village, he mourns the death of the Namekians and the destruction of the agriculture. Namekians have begun to plant Ajiza trees throughout their planet after the near-extinction event wiped out nearly their entire race and all the plants of the planet. Much like Namekians themselves, these trees originate from the second demon realm and were brought to Namek once they fled to the outside universes. They're simply planted for aesthetic purposes and as a symbol of Namekian perseverance, rather than any sort of food, though some games like Dragon Ball Online give the Ajiza tree some more mystical properties, like being able to collect Kili, and the symbol on the back of Orange Piccolo is the Ajiza tree. Episode 57. This episode shows Bulma and Vegeta's very first meeting, though Vegeta shows no interest in Bulma at all, and Bulma is much more focused on how pretty Zarbon is. Bulma has a very peculiar pattern of falling for villains. First with Oolong's transformed form, then Yamcha, General Blue, Zarbon, and finally Vegeta. In fact, in the spin-off manga Dragon Ball SD, Krillin calls her out for this exact reason. Episode 58. The anime adds an extra scene of the Ginyu Force departing from a hidden layer within a mountain in Frieza's planet. Although the Ginyu Force are some of the highest ranking members of the Frieza Empire, they're actually mercenaries for hire. Before being called over to Namek, their mission was to take over planet Yardrat for its strange abilities. The Dragon Ball Super manga, though, implies that the Ginyu Force was already attacking Yardrat when they were called by Frieza, so the planet was inadvertently saved by Goku. Episode 59. The two Frieza soldiers who capture Bulma and conspire to steal the Dragon Balls for themselves are named Blueberry and Raspberry. Raspberry is actually playable in Xenoverse and Dragon Ball Legends, where he has alternate recolor palettes for Navel, Monray, and Goopray. Episode 60. The design of Bulma's underwater mech is directly taken from the Pilaf machine. Does that mean that she has two other ones that make up the body and the legs? Episode 61. The Ginyu Force finally arrives on Namek. According to the Dragon Ball Z2 Gekishin Frieza game guide, the Ginyu each have a little backstory to go along with their powers. Jaiz was part of an intergalactic Little League team where he developed the Crusher Ball, Rikum was a ballerina, which gave him his agility, Goldo discovered his psychic skills when upskirting girls, Ginyu switched bodies with the richest kid in class, and both finally, and most tragically, Birder gained his speed because his mom would hit him if he was late for dinner. Poor Birder. Episode 62. There's a filler scene in this episode where Vegeta bullies Goldo around for being weak, and only being in the Ginyu Force at Frieza's request. Goldo is then blasted away by Frieza. There's a mistake in this flashback where the anime decided to use Vegeta's Namek arc design, despite the fact that this should have taken place long before he even goes to Earth, so he should have different armor and a tail. Episode 63. Goldo's time stop ability has a key weakness where he needs to hold his breath while using it. This is completely made up for the anime, as in the manga the weakness is instead that it just takes a lot of stamina. We can see him talking out loud in the manga while he uses it, and he just runs out of breath because he's tired. The Bardock Special. I want to take a moment to insert a fact about the Bardock special here, since it aired a week before episode 64 in place of a regular episode. So, Bardock and his squad were originally designed by Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru, and later completely revisited by Toriyama. Many different ideas were passed around for this special, including having Bardock be an enemy for Goku to face, but in the end they went with the story we know now. and Akira Toriyama ended up liking what the anime staff did with the special so much that he included Bardock in manga chapter 307. It's not often the anime affects the manga so directly. Episode 64. Rikume's beating on Vegeta results in an arm injury that becomes a trend for Vegeta. It returns during his fight against Frieza, then it's broken by 18, injured the same way by Fat Buu, Kid Buu, Zamasu, Toppo, Gas, and even Omega Shenron in Dragon Ball GT. He should really get that looked at. Episode 65. This episode extends the fight between Rikume and Gohan from just a couple of attacks in the manga to an entire episode. Frieza also rushes to the Grand Elder's home using his hoverpod, the last time he uses it in Dragon Ball Z, before ditching it for normal flight. Although the pod is equipped with an anti-gravity device, Frieza actually controls it using his mind and telekinetic abilities, according to the Dragon Ball Z Kakarot Encyclopedia. Episode 66. The legend of the Super Saiyan is first depicted in this episode as a golden great ape rampaging, though Vegeta believes the legend is more about power itself and not a literal transformation. This flashback would later inform the golden Ozaru transformation in Dragon Ball GT and Super Saiyan 4, both of which are mentioned as the real form of the legendary Super Saiyan in the Dragon Ball GT Perfect Files. In current canon, the original legendary Super Saiyan was revealed to not be a rampaging Saiyan, but a righteous one named Yamoshi, who stood up to the evil Saiyans of planet Sadala before his power ran out and was defeated, though his spirit would wander until stumbling upon a Namekian who would write his story down in the Namekian Book of Legends. Episode 67. In the remastered English dub, this is the final episode to use the Nathan Johnson replacement soundtrack, as the rest of the series uses the Falconer production soundtrack from episode 68 to the end of Z. Also, Nathan Johnson has since then gone on to become a Texas senator, and this was the very first Dragon Ball episode I watched as a kid. Episode 68. Going along with the last fact, the English dub here completely changed, as Funimation took over production from the Ocean dub, many of which did try to somewhat be similar to the last dub voices, but eventually came into their own. The previous 67 episodes would later be redubbed for the remastered English dub, with these new voices. It overall sounds much different from where they started.
That's right. Our chances of winning are just as good as yours are. That's right. Our chances of winning are just as good as yours are.
Episode 69. A subplot begins here where Bulma tries to use the Dragon Balls to escape Namek. This would eventually culminate in the Ginyu Force taking over her body, getting to the battle site between Goku and Frieza, getting blown away from the fight, switching back, and eventually being taken to Earth. In the manga, she just stays in a single place and does basically nothing until they're teleported home. And although it is filler, these events are depicted in Dragon Ball Super as part of Ginyu's return in Resurrection F. Episode 70. Ginyu's power level is said to be 120,000 in this episode, making him the only Ginyu Force member with a set power level from the story itself. Every other member has only ever been given power levels in games, but they vary wildly. Rikume has anywhere from 40,000 to 71,000, Goldo 12,000 to 19,000, Birder 62,000 to 90,000, and the craziest one, Jais has anything from 64,000 to 640,000. Which has to be a typo, since that would make him stronger than Frieza's first form. Episode 71. Bulma looks at a Goku-shaped cloud and wonders if she blew it, since she could have been with him instead of getting into arguments with Yamcha. This actually isn't the first time she's shown interest in Goku beyond a platonic friendship, since when she first sees him all grown up at the World Tournament, she comments on how handsome he's become, with Oolong calling her a pervert. Then in episode 288, when Bulma is sad about Goku being late, Chi-Chi calls her out and says that Bulma must like Goku, although the dub changes it to have Chi-Chi say that they should trade husbands. Episode 72. The scene where Gohan imagines Goku living on Earth as Captain Ginyu doesn't happen in the manga, but it does appear in it, as the cover of chapter 288. Also, in the English dub only, Vegeta calls him Goku in his mind, instead of Kakarot. One of the first and only times he does it. Episode 73. This is the first episode in the series to be filmed in 35mm film, rather than the usual 16mm, meaning that they had better picture quality than normal. This was only done for episodes 73 to 80, and never again. Episode 74. Vegeta gives Gohan and Krillin a set of Frieza Force armor. This specific armor type is an older model designed for the people of planet Lit, a planet of smaller beings, though some games use the translation of Rit armor as a catch-all for any Frieza Force uniform. Episode 75. Porunga is first seen in this episode, summoned by saying Takaraputo Poporunga Papurito Paro. In Namekian, Porunga translates to Dragon of Dreams. Dragon Ball Daima revealed that the original Namekian-made dragon from the Demon Realm was a much larger red Porunga, so it seems like the Universe 7 Namekians used him as the model for the one we see in this episode. Episode 76. Footage from this episode and the last one was used in December 2015 for a Ford Focus car commercial where Krillin tries to use Porunga to wish for the perfect car.
Those are our 3 wishes. 3 different cars with 3
Enough! I'm just giving you the Ford Focus!
A separate commercial was made using Buu Saga footage where Goten and Trunks fuse into the Ford Fusion. Episode 77. This episode introduces the concept of fusion overall to the series, through Nail and Piccolo's merger, something that would become much more prominent in many ways, from the Potara, Fusion Dance, Absorption, and more. In the video game adaptation of this arc, Super Saiyan Densetsu, Piccolo has the option to not only fuse with Nail, but 2 extra Namekians, and even Dende offers himself up for fusion, which massively powers up Piccolo, but at the expense of Dende's free heals. Episode 78. This is King Vegeta's first appearance in any piece of Dragon Ball media ever, as he was only mentioned in the manga before. He was designed by Akira Toriyama, but only his head. And though he doesn't appear in the Bardock special, the flashback in this episode serves as an expansion of the special, revealing that King Vegeta led his own rebellion against Frieza with a small group of elites, before being killed by the Emperor, who then goes on to confront the approaching Bardock. At the time of his death, King Vegeta was the strongest Saiyan according to the Daizenshu, and Toriyama has since then explained that most Saiyans were low class, with only around 10 being middle class and only 2 elites, the Prince and the King. Episode 79. This is one of the most censored episodes in Dragon Ball Z because of the extreme violence of Krillin being impaled and toyed with by Frieza. When it came time to dub it, it had to be stitched together with the next episode in order to cut around a lot of the Krillin scenes. The anime makes this scene a lot more violent than in the manga, which is weird since it's usually the anime which tones down the violence. In the manga, Krillin is stabbed and almost immediately thrown back down, but in the anime, Frieza continues to dig his horn into him, lick the blood dripping down, and even spills it all over Vegeta and Gohan's face. Episode 80. The anime reinterprets the Kienzan barrage as a single Destructo disc that breaks apart into multiple smaller ones, rather than Krillin just spamming the technique like in the manga, which is pretty cool. Episode 81. Because of fusing with Nail, Piccolo knows exactly who Dende is and even seems to have affection towards him. This relationship is reinforced when Dende realizes that Piccolo has fused with Nail by the way in which he fights Frieza, and Piccolo shows off a rare ability of using Nail's voice at one point during the fight.
Do against me, huh, Frieza?
But this is actually an anime-only thing, since Dende doesn't realize Nail and Piccolo fuse together until after the fight against Frieza is over with. Episode 82. Although never outright stated by Toriyama, it's pretty obvious that Frieza's third form takes inspiration from H.R. Giger's Xenomorph design from the Alien franchise. In fact, Toriyama stated in the first issue of the American Shonen Jump that he loves sci-fi movies, specifically saying that Alien was his favorite film, and that it was the catalyst for him wanting to expand the scope of Dragon Ball into sci-fi. Episode 83. Frieza's final form is his original state, as his previous transformations are his attempt at keeping his power contained since he couldn't control his full power as much. There's not a lot of beings in his race, with him and King Cold being unique cases as they're mutants. Toriyama explained that they're a new hybrid species that came into existence from an accidental spontaneous mutation in our grandfather's time. He also goes on to explain that Frieza doesn't consider his men an army so much as a convenient group of followers. Episode 84. The second half of the Japanese title of this episode is a reference to the first ending theme of Dragon Ball Z, Tobikiri Zenkai Power. The word Zenkai has multiple meanings depending on how it's written. While fans often associate Zenkai with a Saiyan near-death boost, this is never actually used in the series to mean that ability, though the fan relation to that term probably comes from Zenkai spelled like this, to mean complete recovery. But in the actual episode title and song, it's spelled like this, meaning full throttle or full force, which is just a high energy phrase. But I will admit, Zenkai Boost sounds a lot cooler than Saiyan Power. Episode 85. The anime extends Vegeta's attack on Final Form Frieza to make Vegeta look a lot less pathetic. He actually fires multiple blasts, unlike the manga where he fires one single one, which is kicked away and he starts crying. On top of that, King Kai replaces the faceless narrator from the manga as the one who expands on Vegeta's feelings, which is appropriate, since the narrator of the anime and King Kai share a voice actor. Episode 86. This episode shows moments of Vegeta's childhood, taking over planets along with his father. Toriyama's original idea for Vegeta was actually to have him be younger than Goku, not the other way around. But the anime and the Bardock special interpreted the prince as being already a kid by the time Goku was born, so he changed his plans to make it in line with what the anime portrayed him as. Episode 87. This is the beginning of the single longest fight in Dragon Ball, and one of the longest in anime history. The anime was getting really close to catching up to the manga, so it was forced to use a lot of filler. The actual behind-the-scenes process of the staff trying to make episodes, adapt the manga, and not catch up during this time is depicted in the one-shot manga called Zenkai Miracle, published in 1991 in V-Jump, where we're taking through the whole process of making a Dragon Ball episode, from Akira Toriyama to the anime staff and the stress in between. It's a very niche manga that just happens to take place during this time. If you'd like to learn more about this specific manga in detail, I have an exclusive video on Patreon all about it. Or just wait, I'll put it up on YouTube at some point. Episode 88. Because the anime creates a whole filler subplot of Chi-Chi, Yajirobe, Roshi, and the others at Capsule Corp trying to get to Namek, it completely cuts out very minor scenes where Yajirobe and Chi-Chi wonder how the team is doing, with Chi-Chi's scene being the very first time we see Goku's home in the manga. Additionally, this is the first episode with Naoko Watanabe as Chi-Chi, taking over from Mayumi Sho, who stepped away from voice acting when she had her kid. Episode 89. In this episode, Frieza becomes the second adversary Goku bites, something he starts relying on more and more. The first was King Piccolo. He will later bite Kid Buu, Baby, Beerus, Whis, Broly, and Frieza again when he's golden. Goku's grab on Frieza here is also referenced in some video games, like in Sparking Zero, where his grab is usually this, but if you do it on Frieza, it references this episode. Episode 90. While the anime gives Roshi, Oolong, Puar, Bulma, and the Dead Z fighters a lot more to do around this time through many filler misadventures, they don't do that much in the manga, and the only real thing we get from them is a special mini-manga showing what they're doing during Christmas. Oolong and Puar are hanging out by the tree, Launch is looking for Tien, Roshi is cleaning, the Dead fighters are playing hide-and-seek, and Bulma is playing a video game on Namek. This would also be Launch's final appearance in the manga. Episode 91. Speaking of final appearances, while Frieza's drowning Goku, there's a whole filler section of Goku having visions of a doomed world, where he thinks of his friends and family, marking the final time evil Launch appears in the anime, though good Launch would appear one more time at the very end of the series, where she gives energy to Goku for the Spirit Bomb. There's also an inconsistency with the last episode, where we ended with the Z fighters finding out that Ginyu is in Bulma's body, but in this one we open with them completely unaware, and finding out in a different way. And because of all of this Ginyu nonsense, when Bulma is sent flying away by Frieza and Goku's battle, neither Piccolo, Gohan, nor Krillin tried to do anything to help her. For all they know, she could have died, but I guess that's the game you play with filler. Episode 92. There's quite a few inconsistencies in these few sets of episodes, as if the teams behind the scenes weren't properly communicating. For instance, in this episode we see the Ginyu Force arrive at King Kai's planet, where King Kai sees them land, but in the next episode they arrive and King Kai comes out of his house completely unaware. Later on, King Kai reveals that he requested King Yema allow the Ginyu Force to keep their bodies as training for the Z fighters, but this doesn't really make sense when you can see their bodies through these episodes on Namek. Episode 93. Although the key required for the Genki Dama, or Spirit Bomb, is simply translated as energy, as in share your energy with me, the technique requires a very specific type of ki, Genki, meaning health or vigor. According to Toriyama, there are multiple kinds of ki in the Dragon world, including Genki, vigor, Yuki, bravery, and Shoki, clarity of mind or true character. This is why in the Buu arc, for example, when humans give their energy to Goku, they end up completely worn out. They've given up their literal vitality. He goes on to say that in real life, people supporting you and encouraging you is them giving you Genki and Shoki. Episode 94. Frieza is the only villain in the entire franchise to get hit by a spirit bomb twice outside of video games. The first time is in this episode, and the second time is when he's revived in the special Dragon Ball Z The Real 4D, which was shown at Universal Studios Japan. And in that one, you're the one to give the energy. Episode 95. The anime plays up the drama of the Super Saiyan transformation and the action around it a lot more than in the manga, which really works in my opinion. For example, instead of Frieza aiming at Piccolo right away, Piccolo jumps in the way of a blast meant for Goku. The transformation itself is a lot longer, since in the manga it's almost instantaneous. Other changes include Goku not shown reacting to Krillin's death in sorrow, and Gohan telling Goku that they can't just leave him, something which Krillin does in the manga. This legendary scene is one of the most iconic Dragon Ball moments, and it was brought to life in animation by the fantastic Masaki Sato. He was a key animator in several episodes and movies, including the first Broly film. Prior to Dragon Ball Z airing, Masaki Sato drew up this promotional illustration for companies. It was so early on that it still shows the title as Gohan's Big Adventure in the sketch. And that, my friends, is what we call a callback. Episode 96. The I am speech Goku gives to Frieza is completely different in English as opposed to Japanese, attempting to make it more heroic with
Allied to good, nightmare to you!
While in Japanese and English Kai, it's corrected back to
I am the Super Saiyan, Son Goku!
For the version in Kai, Sean Schemmel, the voice of Goku, insisted that they retain Goku's full name, the very first time Son Goku is said in English. Episode 97. The Grand Elder's tower is destroyed in this episode, but once he's revived in episode 100, it's still standing as if nothing happened, only for it to be destroyed again in episode 102. This episode also shows Frieza's ship falling into the lava, something which obviously can't happen since Goku finds it and tries to use it to escape. Episode 98. Power levels are more or less done away with after this arc. Frieza doesn't even get power levels in this story itself once he goes past his second form, but the Daizenshu databooks give Frieza a power level of 60 million at 50% and 120 million at 100%, just behind Goku's 150 million. Still, none of these are the highest power levels ever given to Frieza, even long after they've gone away. The Dragon Ball Z Real 4D attraction brings Frieza back with a power level of over 5 billion, though there's a power level even higher than that, but I'll save that for when we get to Super. Episode 99. The rules of the Dragon Balls are more firmly defined in this episode, specifically that they can be used to affect those in faraway worlds, and that they can only revive those killed within a year, even if they die of natural causes, so long as it was caused indirectly by a different being, such as with the Grand Elder. Episode 100. Because the anime adds so many other Frieza soldiers being killed by Frieza himself, they should have also been revived by Popo's wish to bring back those killed by Frieza and his men, but since they're all filler characters, they're completely ignored. The anime also adds a whole sequence of Frieza fighting Gohan, who returns after he believes his father died. Because the anime arranged the scene where everybody is revived, in between Goku getting launched into the planet and him coming back, this caused a lot of discourse and theories about Goku dying here and being brought back. But this was purely a coincidence. In the manga, Goku only takes a few pages to return, and Gohan never fights Frieza. Episode 101. In the anime, Vegeta sees Goku as a Super Saiyan in the flesh on Namek before he's teleported to Earth, while in the manga, he only ever finds out about it once he's on Earth and Gohan tells everyone. This scene is completely omitted from the anime, likely because 1. Vegeta finds out here, and 2. A similar scene already happened, where Gohan is taking Piccolo away to the ship, and he has a similar "my dad became a Super Saiyan" moment, although nobody conscious is around, so... Episode 102. The anime adds not only the Ginyu frog being teleported to Earth, but the frog in Ginyu's body being teleported too, meaning that somewhere out there in the Dragon world, that frog is still hopping around as a purple alien. It's also worth mentioning that that body was severely injured, meaning that he's bleeding out, something Dragon Ball SD points out. Episode 103. This episode reveals that Bulma was taught some fortune-telling when she was a kid, trying to use it to find out if Goku would make it back home by burning 3 small leaves, which sadly tell her that he would not. Gohan just gets upset at her for even questioning it. Episode 104. The flashback of Nappa telling Vegeta and Raditz that he's heard that Frieza destroyed planet Vegeta directly contradicts the fact that Raditz tells Goku the fake meteor story, and that Vegeta was shocked by Dodoria telling him that it was Frieza, although I do think it makes sense for them to question the official story. Also, this is the episode where the insane forehead Vegeta comes from. This was animated by Yukio Ebisawa, who is infamous for this sort of thing. Episode 105. The anime censors Frieza's wounds, since in the manga, his guts are hanging out. It also recontextualizes Goku's emotions with his expression as he defeats Frieza, from one of disappointment and sadness to one that's more stern or even angry. Video games nowadays try to adapt the manga version. Episode 106. Going along with Vegeta being a massive jerk in the anime, not only does he celebrate Goku's death, but he beats Gohan afterwards, leaving him pummeled on the ground before flying away. But clearly, the next episode's team didn't get the memo, since this interaction is never brought back up again, and Vegeta is once again sitting under the tree like before. Vegeta even helps out by suggesting they wish for Goku and Krillin's soul to be moved to Earth, so they can be revived. Gohan even tries to shake his hand, as if he didn't just get the shit beat out of him. Episode 107. There's a few interesting things I want to mention for this episode. First, this is the first episode since the very start of Dragon Ball's anime adaptation where Goku doesn't make an appearance. He's only mentioned. Also, in the dub, this is the final episode to use Rock the Dragon as the theme song, since it would be replaced by a new one by Bruce Faulconer. Though, if you've only seen the show in its home release, then you're probably more familiar with the new theme composed by Mark Menza, used for every episode and the films. Since this is the only time I'll get to talk about Rock the Dragon, I also want to mention that there's a Spanish version of the theme song released on a CD, despite the fact that we never saw that opening in Latin America. Only Chala Het Chala. And finally, Gohan's whistling theme from the 4th Dragon Ball Z movie, Lord Slug, is used while reviving the dead Z fighters. This would technically be the final episode to cover, but since I'm making a follow-up covering the rest of the series, I didn't want to start the next video with a filler arc. So let's finish off with the Garlic Jr. Saga. Episode 108. The events of Death Zone obviously have to happen for this story to take place, but there's many contradictions to this, such as Krillin meeting Gohan for the first time in both the film and the main story. They also decide to bring back Higher Dragon, or Icarus, despite him never getting a proper introduction in the anime. He's not even from Death Zone, he's from Tree of Might, and he quickly disappears from the anime and the movies once the Cell arc proper begins, never to be heard from again, except for this cute art by Dragon Ball Super artist Toyotaro, depicting an older Icarus and Gohan from Superhero. Marin, Krillin's girlfriend, is also introduced in this episode. Her name comes from the French word for chestnut, a name pun she shares with Krillin, as Kuri means chestnut. Krillin did not name his daughter after his ex. The name similarities are purely coincidental. It's unlikely Toriyama realized what he was doing. Episode 109. Chi-Chi uses the Kaioken for a second in this episode, but more importantly, the location and design for Goku's house is changed from what was previously seen in the anime to one that resembles the one seen in the Frieza arc in the manga, but it's still not the one we're used to, since it's still by Grandpa Gohan's home on top of a mountain. Toriyama himself would later change this design during the Cell arc, so this is something of an in-between house. Also, the Sun family has a whole hangar and airplane now, I guess, so good for them. Episode 110. The world I mentioned earlier as having the armor for smaller beings is actually visited by Vegeta while looking for Goku. This isn't in the manga, as Vegeta is implied to never leave Earth there, but the Rit seem to be these beaked people, though it's also sometimes translated as Lit or Lilliput in the manga. Episode 111. In the previous episode, Marin gets taken to Corn Tower to be safe while she's wearing just a swimsuit. But in this episode, she's suddenly wearing a red dress, meaning that one of them must have had one and given it to her, for whatever reason. Episode 112. Garlic Jr., his father, and his minions are beings from the Makio star, which isn't actually a star, but a planet, which comes close to Earth every 5,000 years. They're all named after condiments, including the ones from the film. They are ginger, Nikki, sansho, mustard, salt, spice, and vinegar. The dub gives this group the name of the Spice Boys, a parody of the girl group, the Spice Girls. In Japanese, they're instead called the Four Heavenly Kings of the Demon Clan. Episode 113. This filler episode really expands on Kami's lore. Not only do we have the lore from the film, where Garlic Jr.'s father was in the running to become Kami, but was rejected for having evil intentions, we now know that the souls of the past gods of Earth live in the Shinsenkai, a realm accessible through the bottom of the lookout, where Kami and Popo will be able to use an opening to spread the ultra-divine water throughout the entire world. We only get ghostly looks at him, but the following episodes will show many more Kamis who torture the current one. Seeing how we lose Kami in the Cell arc, it's cool to see him get so much to do, even if it is filler. Episode 114. Piccolo uses his rarely used size-changing ability for the only time in Dragon Ball Z, at least as far as I can remember, since Toriyama more or less forgot about it after the 23rd World Tournament, and its only real appearance after that would be with Lord Slug, much later. In the Super Manga and Superhero, the technique would return, while in this episode, Piccolo uses it to match up against Garlic Jr.'s super form, noting that it sacrifices speed for the sake of power, an idea that would be echoed with Super Saiyan Grade 3 in the next arc. The previous episode also showcases another of Piccolo's lesser used abilities, arm stretching. Episode 115. The water used in this episode is just called the Sacred Water.
Pour the sacred water, Mr. Popo!
Which was the first water Goku had to retrieve from Korin during the Red Ribbon Army arc, which turned out to just be regular water. What's actually used in Japanese is the Ultra Divine Water, the second liquid Goku obtained from Korin, which actually made him go through a whole lot of terrible pain before powering him up. Which makes sense. One's tap water and the other's actually magical. Though with names like that, I don't blame them for making it simpler. This same exact change would be made in Dragon Ball GT, where the Ultra Divine Water would be used to get rid of the Tuffle influence on humanity. Episode 116. In Japanese, the end of the battle against Garlic Jr. uses the same theme from the end of the battle against the same villain in his movie.
Wait a second, don't you remember what happened?
I remember my dad's the strongest fighter in the whole world.
Making for a nice bookend to the arc. I also want to point out that despite the filler arc being whatever overall, I love Gohan being emotional over seeing Krillin be okay, and how much they and their relationship has grown since the series began. Truly an underrated duo. Episode 117. There's a weird mistake here where Yamcha goes from having short hair in the last episode to having long hair at the start of this one, to having short hair again in just a few scenes. This is due to the long hair scenes being him in his baseball outfit. So that's the character sheet the animators had to go on. Episode 118. This episode clearly hints at Vegeta and Bulma being a thing, with the way they treat each other. Still, this was only done because the anime had the benefit of hindsight, as this was not something Toriyama planned ahead of time. Neither Toriyama, his editor, nor the audience knew that Trunks was going to be a thing really. Toriyama didn't set anything up for Vegeta and Bulma. As his second editor, Yu Kondo, explained, there was absolutely no intention to say, let's set up this background and have so-and-so be born. So regarding who Trunks' parents are, it's not like we sit down and planned everything in detail, thinking, later we'll tie all these clues together. So let's set it up like this. Toriyama all of a sudden had him marry Bulma, so even there wasn't anything like, wouldn't it be better if we did this way? We looked at the storyboards and it was already decided, kind of like, so that's how it is, huh? Episode 119. This episode features future Trunks' first proper appearance in the anime. Although never outright stated, it's pretty obvious that he and his story take inspiration from the Terminator franchise. For one, the design of the T-800 informed the creation of Major Metallotron years back. Future Trunks also has some similarities to John Connor from T2, a movie that came out around the same time as his first appearance in the manga. Add to that the fact that the day Trunks warns of, May 12th, is the same day the T-800 arrives from the future to kill Sarah Connor. Also, we see Tien and Chaozu wearing some unusual outfits. In reality, they were working on a farm. Akira Toriyama has explained that, as an epilogue for Tien, Launch eventually did catch up to him, and they lived together at Tien's farm. But she wasn't built for a life with someone who only cared about training and no romance. So she left. But she still visits from time to time, and so does Yamcha. But what really made them wealthy wasn't just their farm, but the freelance work Chaozu would do, as other farmers would hire him, so he'd use his telekinetic abilities on their farms. A business so successful, he ended up amassing sizable wealth, and is likely how they got the money for their dojo in Super. Episode 120. This is the final episode of Dragon Ball Z where a scouter is used, with Trunks' power level of 5 being the final one seen, as he was hiding his power level. This scouter would return many more times in later media, like video games and Dragon Ball Super. Additionally, this episode features one of the best songs in the franchise, Battle Point Unlimited, the theme song of Trunks as he's attacking Frieza. This track was one of the only ones composed by Kenji Yamamoto for the Z anime, as he's most well known for composing theme songs for the movies, video games, and Kai, until he was found out to be plagiarizing his work. Battle Point Unlimited in particular is allegedly taken from The Murder of Love by Propaganda. Episode 121. There's a subtle hint at future Trunks' history after he defeats the Colts and comes together with the others, as the very first two people to trust Trunks and take sodas from him are none other than Bulma and Gohan, his mother and master, bonds that surpassed space and time. Episode 122. The development of the Android arc had many bumps along the way, so much so that 17, 18, and Cell were never meant to exist. In the original manga version of the scene where Trunks warns Goku about the androids, he specifically mentions androids 19 and 20, but Kazuhiko Torishima, Toriyama's first editor, didn't like androids 19 and 20, calling them a geezer and a fat guy, despite the fact that he wasn't Toriyama's editor anymore. But either way, he listened, and Toriyama changed his plans to 17 and 18. Because of this change, the anime decided to keep it ambiguous, rather than straight up name the androids. Episode 123. The original manga had no designs for the Yardrets, since Goku only mentions them and they're never shown. This episode gives them and the planet a filler design. Once Akira Toriyama got involved with the defunct MMO, Dragon Ball Online, he designed what his version of the Yardret looked like, a much different view of what the anime shows. However, Toyotaro, the artist of the Super manga, is a huge Dragon Ball fan, so he managed to marry these two designs by showing that they both exist and are both canon. They're just two different types of Yardrets. The manga also reveals that Goku's mentor during his lost year was the Yardret elder Pibara. Episode 124. The events of this episode, the Z Fighters training and all, are all filler. We don't really get to see how they prepare during those 3 years, since there's just a time skip. We only see a tiny bit of Vegeta, but there's a chapter cover that shows a little bit more, with some things that never happened in the anime, like Gohan and Piccolo sparring against Super Saiyan Goku. Episode 125. The filler episode everyone claims to be the best one. It's a fun one. I mean, this is the only episode in the entire series where Piccolo wears something other than his normal gi, and despite it being filler, it's entirely based on two different covers from the Dragon Ball manga, chapters 255 and 256, where Goku and Piccolo can be seen driving a new car the next chapter, after crashing the last one. They're even driving those same two cars. Episode 126. Although we see a lot more of the rampage in the anime, the main human kill we see from Jiro is censored. In the manga, he rips him out of the car and crushes his neck completely. It's a lot more gruesome. Also, Trunks' baby room has a clock based on the alarm clock invention from Dr. Slump, Toriyama's previous work. But that's not the only Toriyama meta reference in this episode. Around where Piccolo looks for the androids, there's a couple wearing a Bird Studio t-shirt, Akira Toriyama's studio. Episode 127. Goku telling Krillin to take Yamcha up to Bulma, where he left the sensu beans, actually has a mistake in the manga which is corrected in the anime. Yajirobe gives Goku the sensu beans, the androids attack, they jump down to investigate, and suddenly Goku doesn't have the sensu beans. Instead, Bulma does. But the anime added a previous scene where Goku throws them at Bulma, fixing the issue. Episode 128. This episode has a filler scene where Roshi tells Marin the history of the Red Ribbon Army, as a recap for those who miss Dragon Ball. Naughty naughty. For some reason, the dub makes some very weird changes, like claiming that Tao was the military leader of the army, and that he wanted to rule the world, when in reality, he was just an assassin hired to kill Goku. Then they act like Red is Dr. Gero, and that he created all these weapons and was the leader of the army. These are all just really weird script changes, but that last bit isn't entirely wrong. In 2014, with the color release of the Dragon Ball manga, Toriyama had a set of interviews alongside each volume. There, he mentions that Dr. Gero was in fact a founding member of the Red Ribbon Army, and was effectively in control. He goes on to explain that the army resorted to androids as weapons so that they couldn't be used by their enemies, and that he developed all their weaponry and technology. So even if by accident, the dub was partly right. Episode 129. The first episode with Super Saiyan Vegeta. The entire flashback of how he transformed is filler, since we never see it happen in the manga. We barely even get an explanation. I do really like what they went with for the anime. Additionally, we never see Vegeta go into space. It only seems like he trained in the gravity chamber at Capsule Corp. The manga also never implies that the gravity chamber is in another spaceship, but rather just another room at Capsule Corp, something even the anime itself goes back and forth about. Episode 130. Android 19 is finally destroyed. We hardly even knew you. Akira Toriyama has explained that the model for number 19 was a doll that was displayed in a command center of an enemy base. Once the Red Ribbon Army destroyed it, Dr. Gero took it with him as a war trophy. Episode 131. This is the first episode to finally switch from Goku's previous anime-only home to the canon accurate one from the manga, which sits by the river and doesn't have a hangar. The exact address of Goku's place is 58N018, 439 East District. And at least according to Kakarot, it's down from the mountain where Grandpa Gohan's home is. Episode 132. This is the first episode where we get a look at 17 and 18, though they're only properly released in the next episode. Every single android prior to 17 and 18 were fully artificial, like 19, but the main issue Gero had with them was personality control. They all ended up being too dark, too pure, or just plain stupid, according to Toriyama. Some of these older androids also had the power absorption that 19 and 20 do, which was an older energy source Gero had to reinstate after realizing that the infinite energy androids like 16, 17, and 18 were too difficult to control. His idea was that in order to combat the personality problems, he would kidnap humans who were already bad, so he wouldn't have to program their personalities, choosing to kidnap two young criminals, Lapis and Lazuli, who would become 17 and 18. Episode 133. In this episode, we're introduced to one of the strongest characters in Dragon Ball, Door-sama. In all seriousness, despite Krillin and Tien being incredibly strong, they're not able to do anything against the door. It isn't until Vegeta blasts it away that it comes down. But to be fair, if Gero can make androids who are just as strong as Super Saiyans, who's to say that he can't do the same for a door? Later in the episode, Dr. Gero also magically has both hands, when he should only have one since Piccolo destroyed the other one. Episode 134. Android 16 is first introduced in this episode. Although the explanation given by Gero is that 16 would kill them all, Toriyama has since then given more explanations as to why Gero didn't want to release 16. The doctor based Android 16's model on his son. He was a high-ranking soldier in the Red Ribbon Army, but he fell to an enemy bullet. Having a special place in his heart for his child, Gero gave 16 great power and a fearsome explosive mechanism, but he also didn't want him to be destroyed in battle, giving him a gentle personality, which in his eyes caused 16 to become a failure. His model's real name was Gevo, the son of Gero and Vami, a brilliant scientist who was turned into Android 21 in Dragon Ball FighterZ. Episode 135. Android 17 in this episode mocks Vegeta by calling him the Prince of all Saiyans. But 17 shouldn't know that Vegeta is a prince, since the first time this is brought up is on Namek, while facing Dodoria, and Gero did not take his spy bugs to Namek. The dub did have the benefit of hindsight, and Vegeta called himself a prince early on, so in this case, the dub fixes the issue. Episode 136. There's a funny filler scene where two guys come to Kame House and hit on Marin, to which Turtle fights them off. Not only is the only fight Turtle has in the entire series, but he also proves that power levels aren't the only thing that matter in a fight, since in the Saiyan arc, Bulma reads his power level as .001. So either Turtle is crazy capable in other martial arts abilities other than raw power, or these guys are genuinely the weakest characters in the franchise. Episode 137. There's a whole flashback sequence recapping Piccolo's history, from Kami to King Piccolo splitting, to Piccolo terrorizing the world. But for some reason, we skip from young Piccolo's first attack all the way to his battles against Goku, skipping over the backstory of Mutaito sealing Piccolo away with the Mafuba. Also, the medicine for Goku's heart virus goes from pills to a liquid in between episodes. Episode 138. The anime fixes a mistake from the manga where not only is Yamcha's gi magically fixed from one chapter to the next, but the front of his gi changes from the King Kai kanji to the Turtle kanji. Although I always like to think that Chi-Chi just gave him one of Goku's old tops. Episode 139. There's a few interesting things about this episode. First of all, we get an extended flashback of future Trunks in his desolate world. A world where, like, everyone wears jean jackets and has swords, I guess? It seems like they weren't entirely sure on how to represent the future just yet. The insert song that plays through this is called Mind Power Key, marking another theme song for future Trunks. Curiously, he's probably the one Dragon Ball Z character with the most songs dedicated to him. Goku also has a nightmare in this episode, where he pictures the androids exactly as they are, although he's never seen them before. And finally, when Krillin calls Bulma, the ringtone that plays is the theme from Dr. Slump. I guess Krillin's phone is just constant references, since much later on in Resurrection F, his ringtone becomes We Are from One Piece. A reference to the fact that both Luffy and Krillin share a voice actress, Mayumi Tanaka. Episode 140. When Bulma, Trunks, and Gohan find Cell's time machine, Trunks confirms that it's his because of the word hope written on the side. The official English sub and dub both say that it was Bulma who wrote those words, but this is actually a mistake. In the original Japanese and the manga, Trunks says that it was he himself who wrote that word. The Future Trunks illustrated story, released alongside the Bardock anime comic back in the 90s, expands on this, giving context to the word, as Trunks explains that when future Gohan knocked him out, the last thing he remembered hearing was Gohan saying, "Trunks, you are our last hope," something he would take to heart, and before leaving to the past, he would write that word in both memory of his master and as luck for his mission. Episode 141. This episode is the return of the nameless Namekian, aka Piccolo fusing back with Kami. Although we've known since Dragon Ball that Piccolo and Kami were once the same being, them fusing back together was first hinted at when the Grand Elder of Namek implies that if Kami and Piccolo were one, then his power would be enough to take down Frieza. It's not that the original form literally had no name, but rather the Namekian forgot about it long ago. Prior to dividing himself between good and evil, the nameless Namekian was the child of a Namekian refugee from the demon realm, named Katats. Neva from Daima even knew him as an old friend. The child was sent away to be saved from planet Namek's extinction event, where most Namekians of Universe 7 died. Because of this, the nameless Namekian, and thus Piccolo and Kami, are some of the only Namekians not to be the children of the Grand Elder. Episode 142. The terrifying Cell is finally unleashed, but he was never intended to even exist. As I mentioned before, Torishima had called Toriyama to complain about 19 and 20, so Toriyama replaced them with 17 and 18. But that still wasn't enough for Torishima, who complained that the villains were now just a bunch of brats. In response, Toriyama created Cell, but that wasn't the end of the story. His editor during this arc was Yu Kondo, who thought that first formed Cell was really ugly, urging Toriyama to make him transform ASAP. So Toriyama made second form Cell, which he really liked. But Kondo thought he just looked like a moron, so he forced him to transform one last time into Perfect Cell. The bio-android had a ton of different designs before Toriyama settled on something more bug-like, which you can see on screen here. Episode 143. In this episode, Cell explains that he has the cells of Frieza, King Cold, Goku, Vegeta, and Piccolo. That's it for the manga, and nothing implies otherwise. But the anime suggests that Cell has DNA from all the Z fighters. Krillin can feel Tien's energy within Cell, and the android uses the Kienzan and the multiform technique, which he never does in the manga. He also specifically mentions Dr. Gero considering collecting DNA from Trunks, but decided against it since he had enough Saiyan DNA. But that doesn't make any sense, because Cell comes from a timeline where Goku should have been the one to defeat King Cold and Frieza. There is theories about how this could work, but that's a video for another time. Toriyama has explained how messy and difficult it was to keep track of things during this arc. Episode 144. In this episode, Cell reveals that he can use the Spirit Bomb if he wanted to, though we've never actually seen him do it in the show. Many games take this idea and run with it, including the Tenkaichi and Budokai games, where he calls on the planet's stupid energy.
Okay, planet, give me that stupid energy.
But he's not actually the only villain who can use it. The Dragon Ball GT Perfect Files databook claims that Baby's Revenge Death Ball is an evil version of the Spirit Bomb, while in Dragon Ball Heroes, the demonic android Mira has the ability as well. In Budokai 2, when Super Buu absorbs Cell, he gains the Spirit Bomb too. But one of the most interesting characters who can use it is both Goku Black and Fuse Zamasu in Heroes. I mean, if he can use the Kamehameha because he stole Goku's body, I guess it makes sense he could use the Genki Dama too. But it's pretty cool to see it either way. Episode 145. This is the first episode where the idea of going beyond Super Saiyan is introduced, specifically by Vegeta, the plot point of Dr. Gero's secret lab underground, and the supercomputer that created Cell would later be reused for a few different expanded universe stories, like Dragon Ball FighterZ, where Android 21 was kept in a similar secret lab, and Super Android 13, where we see Gero get killed by 17 and his blood flows down to the secret basement, where 13, 14, and 15 were developed. In the anime and the manga, these androids are specifically said to have been destroyed. Speaking of which, an android who absorbs two other androids to achieve his super form is another example of one of the movie's remixing concepts from the main story. Episode 146. We are exactly at the middle point of the Dragon Ball Z anime. This largely filler episode has Krillin face off against First Form Cell at an airport, making Krillin the only character in the anime to try and fight every form of Cell, even counting his Embryo and Cell Max. Above that, one of my favorite pop culture references happens here. When Krillin's head goes through the plane wall, Cell places his hand over his face, but pulls back, wagging his finger and running away. This is a homage to the 1983 Twilight Zone movie, where a monster attacks a plane and does this exact same thing. Episode 147. This episode introduces the concept of the Room of Spirit and Time, otherwise known as the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, a room where one day outside is a whole year inside, meaning that every second is about 6 minutes and 5 seconds outside. Goku first trained in this place while he was Kami's student before the 23rd World Tournament, though back then he could barely even make it a month. Although Goku says the chamber can only house 2 people at a time, the reality is that there's only enough supplies for 2 people. In the Buu Saga later on, we will see Goten, Trunks, Piccolo, and Super Buu all enter at once. Episode 148. The anime once again fixes a mistake from the manga related to Yamcha, since he just completely disappeared during this portion of the story. We can see that he's at Kame House in chapter 366, and just isn't there anymore the next chapter. He doesn't appear again until chapter 389, a whole 2 volumes later. In the anime though, he sticks around at Kame House, where he senses the battle against 17, but this is only a temporary fix, since by episode 150, he's also gone, but comes back a few episodes later. Episode 149. The fight between Piccolo and Android 17 continues in this episode. Between the twin androids, 17 is both younger and stronger than 18. 17 was built with too much focus on power, which allowed him to be way too rebellious. And though Gero tried to fix this with 18 by restricting her power more, she still didn't follow orders. Episode 150. The anime slightly censors the blast from Cell to Piccolo, as in the manga, the hole left behind is much larger and gruesome, while in the anime you see a smaller hole with just his clothes ripped. I also haven't gone to mention this, but both Piccolo and Cell get extra fingers in the anime. In the manga, Piccolo has 4 fingers and Cell 3, but they both have 5 in the anime. The Summer Vacation Special. Between episodes 150 and 151, a small special called Dragon Ball Z Summer Vacation Special was aired. It opens with Super Android 13, but Goku and Gohan eventually return to the city with tuxedos halfway through, and begin recapping all the films up to that point, in celebration for Super Android 13, which had recently been released. The special ends with Goku exploding in power and destroying the tuxedo, while Gohan isn't strong enough to do that just yet. Why Goku gave Gohan a tuxedo made of Katshin is anyone's guess. If you want to learn more about these very weird and obscure specials, I have a video all about it. Episode 151. The infamous scene where Goku stops Gohan from helping Piccolo by punching him across the face is filler. He doesn't do that in the manga. Also, this episode randomly decides to give Cell fangs under his beak, something he never had before and never has again. Episode 152. Cell finally absorbs 17 in this episode. In English, we're used to Cell having 3 very distinct voices for all of his forms. But in Japanese, although they are different, Norio Wakamoto gives them a more similar voice.
お前はすぐに私の食事になる。こうなったら無理にでも貴様を吸収してやる。軽くウォーミングアップでもするか。
While in English, Damon Clark gives them very different voices.
Bees lose their sleeves, they're gone for good.
Don't you find it remarkable how powerless you are? I could do that too if I wanted.
This is why some older games, like the Budokai series, have Cell still sound like his first form during the fights, despite transforming. Because in Japanese, they could get away with just using first form Cell's damage sounds. But in English, he sounds a little weird. There was only files for the one Japanese voice, which the dub had to follow. Episode 153. This is the second episode with the Sacrifice title in English. And funny enough, the first one was also about Tien using the Kiko Ho to stop a villain. In the manga, Tien does about 5 tri-beams before falling down, but the anime really extends this to over 80. I personally counted 88 total across 2 episodes, which just means anime Tien is just built different. Episode 154. Vegeta and Trunks finally step out of the time chamber, with Trunks having clearly changed, especially with his long hair. Vegeta explains that pure-blooded Saiyans have hair that doesn't really change, unlike humans and half Saiyans. Toriyama has since then expanded on this concept. In the super exciting guide from 2009, Toriyama explained that Saiyans can have their hair change, using Nappa going bald as an example. The state of Saiyan hair is the same as the Earthlings, but its properties are just a bit different. It seems like Saiyan hair does usually stay the same, but it can be cut, and you can lose your hair when you age. But Saiyans do stay young for a long time, so it probably takes a while. Episode 155. Surprisingly, Super Vegeta and Trunks' respective counterpart have actually appeared in 2 different movies. Not counting flashbacks like in Superhero, Vegeta and Trunks use their great 2 states in the first Broly movie and the BoJack film. They're also in that form in Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans, though their muscle mass doesn't always properly reflect that state. Episode 156. In the scenes where Goku tells Gohan to imagine Cell killing his friends, Gohan says that he's never met Cell, so he instead imagines Frieza. We then get flashbacks of the Frieza arc, but for some reason, the only death Gohan actually imagines is Dende, since the other 2 are Goku in the explosion of Namek, which Gohan wasn't there for, but sure, he did think his father was dead, and Piccolo, who was just knocked out by a death beam. He doesn't imagine Vegeta, nor Krillin, nor any of the Namekians he actually saw die. This scene is also in the manga, but in it, Gohan doesn't blink in and out of Super Saiyan like in the anime. Instead, his aura starts to lift up his hair, but he falls to his knees. Gohan will actually go Super Saiyan in episode 160, which we don't actually see in the manga. There, Gohan actually gets flashbacks to all the death he's seen, including Krillin, so maybe that's why he didn't get it the first time. Episode 157. For some reason, what Vegeta drinks depends on each English dub. In the Funimation dub, he says,
I do a lot of push-ups and sit-ups, and I drink plenty of juice.
While in the Ocean dub, Vegeta seems to want a little bit more calcium in his diet, saying,
I do a lot of push-ups and sit-ups, and I drink plenty of milk.
Episode 158. Krillin destroys the detonator in this episode, saving Android 18. We had already gotten hints at 18 and Krillin's feelings, especially Krillin over 18, but we never see exactly how they end up together. Toriyama has admitted that he's really bad at romance, but has explained that Android 18, as a former delinquent, found Krillin's seriousness and straightforwardness refreshing, so she ended up falling for him. We could have actually seen a little bit more of this in Battle of Gods, which was originally going to take place at Krillin and 18's wedding, but once Toriyama got involved, he changed it completely. Episode 159. Cell finally absorbs Android 18. As I mentioned before, Cell transformed as fast as he did because of editor interference. But second form Cell was actually Akira Toriyama's favorite, and he did have different plans for him, where he would play a much more active role. It's hard to imagine the story going any other way since perfect form is so iconic, so I wonder what he had in mind. Episode 160. This episode adds a filler scene where Krillin launches a Destructo Disc at Cell. This doesn't happen in the manga, but it wouldn't be the only time Krillin would use that technique against Cell. In the manga version of Superhero, not only does the Kienzan damage Cell max, But because of that, 18 is able to break apart his wing, both of them getting revenge for the events of this episode. Trunks also has visions of the future where he imagines the deaths of future Gohan, Bulma, and Goku at the hands of Cell. So this is yet another different view of the future. Episode 161. This is the first proper battle with Perfect Cell, and it's a really ugly episode. But honestly, I do feel for the animators, since it's become well known that Cell is a horrifically hard character to draw and animate. Akira Toriyama has said that the spots on his body were a really tedious task, and thought that they were a mistake in retrospect, but the drawings felt empty without it. Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru, who I've mentioned before as one of the most prolific animators and character designers, agreed with Toriyama, saying that it was even worse because of the shadows they had to add. And on top of that, the animators were always in competition with each other to make the art better and more detailed with shadows. In Superhero, for the reanimated scenes, Chikashi Kubota asked Naohiro Shintani, the character designer for Broly, to add in the details of the spots for his art of Cell, which Shintani said never again to after finishing. Everyone hates all those darn spots. Special thank you to my good friend Vaughn DBZ for that one. Episode 162. This episode shows that future Trunks has achieved Super Saiyan Grade 3, a powerful but very slow form. Takao Koyama, the creator of Broly, has said that he was inspired by future Trunks' transformation sequence into Grade 3 to create an extremely powerful and scary Super Saiyan villain. This episode is also the debut of the final Flash, where in some dubs, like the German one, Cell actually curses when hit by it.
Oh shit!
Episode 163. The fight between Trunks and Cell is much longer in this than in the manga, since there, Trunks isn't able to land a single hit on Cell, but here he performs a little better. The official French and Spanish guide, The Legendary Manga, says that this form is 10 times stronger than Grade 2, but brought down by its lack of speed. Although the 10 times multiplier may be a little weird. In this episode, Krillin compares Trunks to an Ozaru, so that's likely where the idea comes from. In Dragon Ball Super, a similar idea would come later on for Broly's Ikari form, which is the power of an Ozaru in his base form. Episode 164. Time for another round of the anime's favorite pastime, making visions of the future. This time we get something both close and very different to what would be shown in the special, which was still a few months away from being released. This ends up causing some contradictions, such as Yajirobe dying in this episode, which isn't seen in the special, nor does it carry over to Super. Trunks also uses a sword while still being a kid, and future Gohan has his scars despite still having an arm, which the special shows as happening at the same time. The death of the Z-Fighters is also different all around. Still, it's a really cool sequence. We also get a separate, rare view of a different future, the one which Cell comes from. Episode 165. This is one of the only times we see Goku use Super Saiyan Grades 2 and 3. But for whatever reason, after making a 2-second appearance in this episode, Goku uses Grades 2 once again during the Otherworld Tournament filler later on, as the Daizenshu guidebook specifically points out that Super Kaioken, which Goku uses against Pikkon, is a technique used alongside Super Saiyan Grade 2. Episode 166. In the scene where Master Roshi explains the World Tournament to everyone, Oolong says that Roshi won the tournament a long time ago, while Puar is completely unaware. What's curious is that neither of them should know that he was Jackie Chun, but there is somewhat of an explanation to this. Master Roshi could be talking about a separate win at the World Tournament, before his Jackie Chun victory. In World's Strongest, the second Dragon Ball Z movie, Goku talks about Roshi having won the tournament, but he's not talking about his match against Jackie, but a tournament victory from 50 years ago, as the movie's pamphlet explains. This makes sense, since he was already a famous martial artist with vast knowledge of the tournament, so it is likely that he's known for a win before the series begins. This scene also mentions that the World Tournament was not held since the destruction of the arena by Piccolo Jr., but this actually isn't true. The 24th World Tournament was held on May 7th, age 767, a few days before the android's attack. We eventually see this in a flashback when Popovich battles Videl. Episode 167. This is one of the only times the term Z-Fighter is used in the actual story, though only in the English dub.
Dad's a Z-Fighter, Mom. He's not in a gang.
This is a term never used in the manga. The term is only really used in episode titles and by the narrator, with the first instance of it being used in the title of the first Dragon Ball Z special. Another interesting change that happens during the nightmare sequence is that originally Chi-Chi isn't complaining about Goku, she's complaining about Piccolo being a delinquent. During this same nightmare, Gohan also pictures Perfect Cell, but he hasn't seen any form of him. But to be fair, this has kinda been a recurring thing during this arc, since other characters, like Goku, picture the androids without ever meeting them. There's also a scene of narration in the manga where it's mentioned that the world had forgotten about the one who saved them from Piccolo, the Saiyans and Frieza. The world had forgotten about Son Goku. One of the most chilling scenes in the manga. Episode 168. There's a really cool sequence while Dr. Briefs and Bulma are fixing 16, where we can see his coding, including images of Jiro's information on Goku. But there's a bit of a mistake here, since it also ends up showing scenes of the Namek arc, like Super Saiyan Goku. These are scenes 16 should not have programmed inside because Jiro's spy bug never made it to planet Namek, and Jiro had no idea about Super Saiyan. The Dragon Ball Z Kai version of this episode fixes it by cutting away before the Namek scenes are shown. Episode 169. The 10 Days of Peace begin. Cell actually saves the world in this episode by destroying a meteor coming down to Earth, which doesn't happen in the manga. He just stands in the Cell Games arena and destroys the army. The outfit Goku wears during these episodes has him wear a really nice 59 jacket. The number is a pun off of Goku's own name, as 5 and 9 are read as Goku in Japanese. This is also the reason why May 9th is Goku Day. Episode 170. Tao Pai Pai returns in this filler episode to give Gohan some trouble. But this isn't his only appearance around the Cell Games. In the Pleidia game, True Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans, Gohan can find Tao Pai Pai atop a fracking machine while looking for the Destron gas. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot also took inspiration from this filler episode to add in some missions where Tao and his brother, the Crane Hermit, show up to scam some people, which Gohan has to take care of. Toriyama has spoken on the fate of these characters, since they disappear after the 23rd World Tournament in the manga. He went on to say that the two brothers were dead, because they got mixed up in something or the other, and since they were bad people, they probably weren't returned to life. My personal theory is that Buu got them. Episode 171. The Gohan Birthday Filler Episode. This episode doesn't actually take place on Gohan's birthday, and is instead a day to celebrate since Chi-Chi missed out on his birthday while he was in the time chamber. And we even get some backstory for Gohan, showing us the first time he used his powers, and how he ended up getting his name. The names given differ between languages. For example,
Dad, look, he's fine about the name Einstein.
but there are many more examples. Episode 172. This episode has some really sweet scenes of Goku, Chi-Chi, and Krillin going out for a picnic. This does happen in the manga, but with one big difference. Krillin isn't there. I personally love this change, since we've recently spent so much time with Krillin, and his relationship with Goku was at full display, making his sacrifice later on even more heartbreaking. We also find out that Goku did in fact get his driver's license after the filler episode with Piccolo, with Chi-Chi pleading to the instructor to give him a chance, and studying all night with him for the written portion. Toriyama explained in the Daizenshu that Goku's car is based on a Subaru 360, and that the wheels are not there for movement, since the car floats, but for repositioning it by hand when it lands. Episode 173. Dende becomes Kami of Earth in this episode, but a movie actually predicted this long before it happened in either the manga or the anime. Return of Cooler, known in Japanese as Clash 10 Billion Powerful Warriors, was released on March 7th, 1992. In the film, the Z-Fighters are going to New Namek at the request of Dende, who scents trouble, only to find it overrun by an army of metal coolers. The thing is, Dende shouldn't be Guardian of Earth. In fact, he shouldn't be on Earth at all. This movie came out out a whole 7 months before Goku would get Dende to become Kami of Earth, and the chapter wouldn't be adapted into the anime until 11 months after the film was released. This is why Dende wears something completely different from what he usually does. They had nothing to go by. As we've explained before, Toriyama didn't really plan this story, so maybe Toei just saw Dende's new role as an obvious progression, or it was one of the few instances of Toriyama planning ahead. This was even before Kami and Piccolo fused in the anime, and less than a month after they did so in the manga. This means that if you were a kid watching the Dragonball anime, not only did you get spoiled on Dende becoming Kami, but we're also left wondering what happened to Kami in the first place. Episode 174. Here we have another episode with Tao Pai Pai. In the English dub of Z, Tao is often called General Tao.
General Tao, I've been waiting for you.
But in the main story, he isn't a general at all, just a hired assassin for the Red Ribbon Army. The title of General comes from the third Dragon Ball movie, Mystical Adventure, an Elseworld story where Tao is working as a general under Emperor Chaozu. Also, Mr. Satan, or Hercule in the dub, who was introduced in the last episode, actually has a backstory directly related to Tao. Akira Toriyama has explained that Mr. Satan is just a stage name. His real name is Mark, and he trained at the Satan Dojo. One day, while out with his master, they made fun of a guy with weird hair, who turned around and killed his master. This was Tao Pai Pai. Ever since then, Mark promised himself to never challenge someone if he wasn't 100% sure about their power. Episode 175. The Cell games finally begin in this episode. In the original Shonen Jump and volumes of the Cell games, Cell originally names the date as May 17th. The Kanzenban release, a perfected version of the manga with new covers and an extended ending, fixed the date to May 26th to go along with the Daizenshu. The Future Trunks Special. The second Dragon Ball Z special. Unlike the Bardock one, where the anime version came first, and Toriyama later brought Bardock into the manga, this special is based on a short bonus chapter by Akira Toriyama, named Trunks the History, the Lone Warrior. There's quite a few notable differences between this and the anime, including the fact that we meet Gohan without an arm already, and Trunks has Super Saiyan before Gohan dies. The chapter is relatively short, and has very little fighting, so we don't actually see a lot of the confrontation shown in the anime, nor do we see future Chi-Chi, Roshi, etc. We don't even see Trunks' battle against the androids prior to the departure to the past. This is one of the few times where the anime version is very clearly the preferred one, as it's the one used in flashbacks for Dragon Ball Super, even if they do remake it. And I will admit, as much as I prefer the manga most of the time, changing it so Trunks' transformation is triggered by Gohan's death is a genius move. There is also a bonus chapter in the Super manga, which shows the moments leading up to future Piccolo's death, where Gohan and Bulma try to get the Dragon Balls but are too late, as the Pilaf gang use them to turn themselves into kids, and Piccolo dies. Episode 176. Mr. Satan's disciples are completely filler, but they were actually one of the few things carried over from filler into Dragon Ball Super, as they make cameo appearances in Mr. Satan's home, and they've also had their own illustration by Toyotaro. Episode 177. The battle between Goku and Cell begins. But this actually isn't the first time they fought. There's a pretty rare special from 1992 called Gather Together, Goku's World. It was a VHS game where viewers could answer Dragon Ball trivia questions as Goku called them on the phone. This story takes place in a weird period of time where 17 and 18 hadn't been released just yet, but Trunks is in the past as they wait for them. Through the story, our heroes go back in time to reminisce on past adventures, with Goku even meeting his past self. They eventually return to the present, and as it turns out, Cell was not only unleashed, but had also been absorbing people in West City, and managed to absorb 17 and 18, while Goku and the others were away. Cell is able to handle them all pretty easily, until Goku goes Super Saiyan. So Cell uses the multiform technique, but thanks to us, he's able to get a clean hit in on the main Cell. And after that single punch, Cell gives up and flies away. I guess that must have been a really strong punch. Goku and the others watch the sunset, saying that no matter how strong Cell gets, they will be ready. It's a fun and obscure little story. Episode 178. During the battle against Cell, Goku uses an attack that's a direct reference to the pose from Chala He Chala, which has been referenced many times since then, including Daima. Episode 179. Sean Schemmel, the voice actor for Goku in English, has said that one of the most famous scenes from this episode is also his favorite scene, the instant transmission Kamehameha.
One of my favorite moves that also did work is uses the Kame instant transmission Ha in Cell Space. And when I first did that, I thought, oh, that's gonna work for sure!
The animation supervisor and animator responsible for the incredible Goku vs. Cell were Keisuke Masunaga, correcting animator Tatsufumi Tamamura in the section everyone loves. Also, in episode 177, Master Roshi is watching the battles with Oolong, Puar, and Chaozu, but in this episode, they're gone and he's also changed clothes. Episode 180. There's something of a plot hole here in the manga and the anime, as Cell explains that as long as the cluster of cells in his head remain, he can regenerate. But we see him regenerate with his entire upper body blown off, and later his whole body. But honestly, if those cluster of cells could survive the self-destruct, I can buy it surviving this. Episode 181. One of the episodes this chapter is adapting is chapter 404, one of the few beautiful colored chapters. In it, Toriyama's comment for the chapter mentions his robot machine for Shonen Jump's 25th anniversary. This arcade machine design was turned into a real Dragon Ball Z arcade game based on the Frieza arc in 1993. The game's sequel, Super Battle, was released 2 years later, based on the Cell games. That game has a bunch of alternate endings, including one where Goku turns Cell into a good guy, and one where Cell destroys the world. Episode 182. The anime adds this running gag about the news reporter calling Gohan a bento sales boy, which began last episode but really continues here. This is because Gohan means rice or meal. They keep bringing it up over and over, though the dub changes it to say that he's a delivery boy, leading to one of the funniest dialogues in the show.
What sort of food will satisfy this terrifying creature's dark appetites? Will it be Chinese? Perhaps submarine sandwiches or pizza?
I don't know why, it's just so ridiculous, it cracks me up. King Furry also recognized Goku in an earlier episode, but in this episode, they decided to cut out any reference to King Furry recognizing him.
I will not send any more men to their graves.
The dub does this sometimes where they just remove references to the original Dragon Ball, most likely because it was still a few years away from being dubbed. Episode 183. The title for this and the next episode are switched in English. Whereas this one is called Cell Jr.'s Attack in Japanese, the next one is called that in English. In this episode, Cell creates 7 Cell Juniors, but in episode 185, he will end up killing 8. Gohan ran up on the Cell Juniors so hard he killed one twice, I guess. Episode 184. In this episode, we get one of the best transformation scenes in the whole series, Gohan turning into Super Saiyan 2. The theme that plays in this scene in Japanese is called Unmei no Hi, Tamashi vs. Tamashi, or Days of Destiny, Spirit vs. Spirit. It's weird to think about now, but the first time Super Saiyan 2 is named is when Goku's showing off all the transformations to Majin Buu. Before that, Super Saiyan 2 in guides and things like that was known as Super Saiyan Grade 5. While making Battle of Gods, Akira Toriyama had totally forgotten about Super Saiyan 2 and thought that 2 was the one with long hair. To be fair, they do look pretty similar on anyone but Gohan here. Episode 185. Though the Cell Juniors are killed by Gohan in this episode, the Dragon Ball Super manga shows in a bonus chapter that they're actually still around on Earth, specifically on Monster Island, where 17 tamed them and trained with them over the years. Though 17 says they are not the originals, the chapter ends with the implications that they might be. Episode 186. In this episode, Gohan uses one of his most long-lasting attacks, the Soaring Dragon Strike, which has appeared in many video games since then as one of Gohan's signature moves, with even adult Gohan using it. In Sparking Zero, it's part of Gohan's grab, but only against Cell, where he gets a unique animation. Episode 187. Gohan uses the Kamehameha for the first time in this episode, slowly adopting it into his moveset from here on out. Android 18 is also released. In Dragon Ball Super, it's revealed that the androids were indeed conscious inside Cell the entire time, and could hear and see everything. Episode 188. We get quite a few major character deaths in this episode. First, Goku and King Kai sacrificing himself to save Earth from Cell's self-destruction, with 17 dying within him as well. Then, when Cell comes back, he shoots a random death beam that kills Trunks. Goku in particular was supposed to stay dead, with Akira Toriyama going as far as apologizing to Goku and feeling sad about the scene, but Toriyama would bring Goku back eventually, realizing that Gohan didn't fit the leading role quite as well. Episode 189. Future Gohan and present Gohan have interesting parallels in this episode. While future Gohan lost his arm defending Trunks from the androids, present Gohan gets his arm broken and rendered useless while saving Vegeta from Cell. Episode 190. This episode has an anime original flashback where we see Cell's future and his origin, specifically the death of Dr. Gero in his timeline. He's still killed by 17 and 18, but in this, they're in the basement of the lab, and 17 kills him with a hand swipe instead of a kick. 17 and 18 then blow up the lab, but Cell is intact and he develops. Also, while editing this, I realized that 17 killing Gero is one of the most reanimated scenes in Dragon Ball. We see future Gero in this episode, the original death, his death in Super 13, a flashback in GT, and even Superhero. Someone behind the scenes really doesn't like Gero. Episode 191. The Z Fighters all helping out with their blast against Cell is filler. This doesn't happen in the manga. Forms are also switched around in the anime, as Goku and Vegeta were both in base form during the climax, but are shown as Super Saiyan in the anime. The father-son Kamehameha is one of the most iconic techniques in all of Dragon Ball, with it being remixed many times over through the franchise, including some with Bardock and future Gohan in Heroes and Xenoverse. And it's even inspired works outside, such as this illustration of Iron Man and Spider-Man by Yusuke Murata. Episode 192. In this episode, the Z Fighters gather at Kami's lookout to use the Dragon Balls. When they wish to revive those killed by Cell, they completely forget to revive those killed by 19 and 20 on the island. So, damn, rip I guess. For some reason, the Kai version of this episode also mentions that King Kai was revived with the wish, which isn't the case in neither the original version of the anime nor the manga, not even what comes next in Kai the Final Chapters. Episode 193. In this episode, Android 18 leaves the lookout after Krillin wishes for her and her brother's bomb to be taken out. We don't see where she goes, but the Dragon Ball Super manga does show us that. She goes to see Android 17, who was revived at the site of the Cell games. She tells him about everything, and how now that Goku is dead, they can live free lives. Surely, this not only played into 18's decision to get with Krillin, but it also convinced Android 17 to join the Tournament of Power in the manga. Episode 194. This is the epilogue episode of the Cell arc, and the final time future Trunks would appear in the series until Dragon Ball Super outside of the movies.
This man isn't black! What?
The old man that Trunks saves in this episode from being shot by 17 is actually killed in the manga, though he's shot off screen and we only see the bullet casing fly by. Funny enough, despite Trunks being gone after this, he remained one of the most popular characters until the very end of the story, being voted as number 3 in the Buu Arc manga popularity poll. Episode 195. In this episode, we travel to Otherworld and meet a plethora of new characters, some of which are from Goku's past. This is the first and only time Goku meets King Cold in the present timeline, since Trunks stole his kill. We also get some cool Easter eggs, including a pair of Shimoyans, and someone from the same race as Moa from Movie 8, as well as a Kanasan warrior from the Bardock special, and another warrior with a vest, which some headcanon as Metamorian, but this was definitely not on purpose. One of the most interesting things about this episode are the color changes Toei added last minute. In the next episode preview for this episode, we see Goku turn Super Saiyan, but when the episode aired, Goku's legendary golden hair has been changed back to black, instead of the usual gold. This was likely done to save Pikkon the surprise of Super Saiyan for later, but since it was already animated, they ended up giving Goku a new form by accident, which has been retroactively given the name of Super Saiyan Power in games like Heroes. Episode 196. In this episode, the Otherworld tournament begins, and we get acquainted with more heroes of the Northern Quadrant, one of them being Olibu. Though he was a completely filler creation, he makes an appearance in the official Dragon Ball Super manga, in a bonus chapter for the Superhero arc. Trunks' class takes a trip to a museum dedicated to Earth's greatest heroes, such as Master Mutaito, who defeated King Piccolo, the Great Saiyaman, Mr. Satan, and an unknown hero, who's actually Goku, are also there. But one big surprise was seeing Olibu, one of the only times something from anime filler was brought into the manga. Episode 197. Speaking of Toyotaro drawing filler characters, the Otherworld fighters who appear in this episode have all received their own little tributes as one of Toyotaro's monthly drawings. Additionally, the South and Northern Kais are the only cardinal Kais we meet in the original manga, but Toyotaro brought the West and East Kai, who were only in anime filler before, into the manga as cameos in the table of contents for Dragon Ball Super Volume 22. Episode 198. Pikkon and Goku finally enter the ring in this episode, but Pikkon's design was almost completely different. Toei first designed Pikkon to have a character design of the previously mentioned Vest character, and even this more normal-looking guy, but Toriyama came in and designed his own version of the character. Episode 199. The climax of Goku and Pikkon's battle. Something interesting about this is who is in the crowd. There's some reused character designs and Easter eggs, like an unknown Namekian, someone who looks like an older Cell Saga Gohan with Piccolo's outfit, a guy who looks like General Akbar from Star Wars, Akira Toriyama himself as Toribot, someone who stole Broly's fit, and even a little Easter egg of Akman, a little demon guy from one of Toriyama's other manga. Even the hero from Dragon Quest II, and someone that looks exactly like the Great Saiyan before he even shows up in the series. But there's a lot more of these. Episode 200. It's been 7 years since the defeat of Cell, and this episode marks the beginning of the Buu Saga, and the first time since the start of Z where we get a miniature rebranding of sorts. A new opening called We Gotta Power replaces Chala Hechala, and a new ending, We Were Angels, replaces Zenkai Power. There's new eye catches, and the second Shunsuke Kikuchi Dragon Ball Z soundtrack specifically made for the anime begins to be used from here up to the end of the series, giving the Buu Saga a pretty different feel from the rest. It's also my favorite soundtrack. We Gotta Power has quite a focus on Gohan's time in high school, and Goku in Otherworld, which for the anime staff seemed to be the direction the manga was going. But as explained by his editors, Toriyama got bored of that pretty quickly, and changed courses. So we got an opening animation that didn't really represent what the Buu arc did, but at least it didn't spoil the entire thing like Kai. Gohan's gym teacher also seems to be based on Freddie Mercury, the lead singer from Queen. Akira Toriyama's wife was a big fan of Queen, and even wrote a manga based on the band, so it is likely that this was on purpose. For the 27th anniversary of Freddie Mercury's death, Dragon Ball Super artist Toyotaro drew the gym teacher posing like the rock star. Episode 201. One of the chapters this anime episode is adapting, 424, is completely different in the manga. The general idea is the same. Videl gets a call to help out in the city. Gohan overhears and he jumps into action as well. But in the manga, it's two criminals who are escaping and blowing up cars, rather than a set of bank robbers taking a bus full of seniors. The anime makes Gohan a little more heroic, and the conclusion of the manga adventure doesn't get adapted until a few episodes later. In fact, this is pretty much it for the Great Saiyan adventures in the manga. Although the two criminals don't make it into the story itself, they do appear in the opening and Dragon Ball Super. Episode 202. This is one of the shortest Japanese Z titles, lacking the usual two-part phrasing. Here we see a flashback of Goku and Chi-Chi's first date, exclusive to the anime. In the manga, Goku doesn't see Chi-Chi again after their first meeting until the 23rd World Tournament, but the anime did add a filler episode during the Red Ribbon Army arc. But the events in this flashback never happened there. More importantly though, this episode has something of a dark history in America. It was originally supposed to air on September 19th, 2001, only 8 days after the 9/11 terror attacks on New York. So of course, it was pulled, and instead, episode 203 was aired. But what was wrong with the episode that they wouldn't allow it? Well, it features the Great Saiyan saving people from burning buildings. This was one of many instances of changes made to media during this time. The episode would eventually air on November of that year. Episode 203. The leader of the criminals who kidnapped the mayor of Satan City is named Rock, and he's actually a character from a different Toriyama manga, Dub and Peter 1, where he's the minion of Lord Asatias, who kidnaps a girl. Dub and his super smart car, Peter 1, stop the duo and rescue the girl by shooting Asatias' car off the air. It's a fun little one-shot, but what's really interesting about it is that it takes place in Peppertown, the same town future Gohan dies in the future, and they use Zenny. All of that, coupled with Rock's appearance in this episode, makes me think that it really is supposed to take place in the Dragon World. Episode 204. The end of this episode picks back up where the previously mentioned chapters which were not adapted ended, where Videl and Gohan stopped the criminals. This time, chapter 405 is where Videl finds out that Gohan is the Great Saiyan during the same altercation. She finds out more or less immediately after he starts being a superhero, while in the anime there's quite a few adventures in between these events, and she ends up confronting him at school rather than right then and there. The Great Saiyan stories end here in the manga, but the anime has a little bit more to show us. Episode 205. There's some reused designs in this episode, in particular, the director and his assistant being clearly based on Red and Black from the Red Ribbon Army arc. There's also this peculiar owl, which hasn't shown up since Dragon Ball Episode 2. In the scene where Goku talks to Gohan from Otherworld, in the anime, he's with Uranai Baba, whereas in the manga, she's not there, and instead, we can see that Goku is in heaven, with a little dog and a squid alien hanging around. Bulma also wears a rarely seen outfit in this episode, which only really appears here and the training mode of Budokai 3. Her model seems to be left over from a scrapped playable Bulma, since not only can you get a Bulma character capsule through glitches, which does nothing, but there's also audio files of the announcer saying her name.
Bulma versus Bulma!
And even a video of Bulma's voice actress performing battle lines. Episode 206. In the English dub of this episode, Goten mentions that the dinosaur he's playing with reminds him of Icarus, the only time he's mentioned in the anime since he disappeared in the previous arc. In Japanese, he just says that the dino is his friend. Speaking of Goten, the scene of Goten and Chi-Chi training and him going Super Saiyan is anime exclusive. In the manga, he only mentions her showing him some moves, and that he has no idea why he can go Super Saiyan. The anime ends up combining both of these ideas. And finally, when Chi-Chi reminisces about Goku when Videl arrives, the image of them driving after the wedding is taken from the cover of chapter 171 of the manga. Episode 207. The scene where the South Kaio comes to see Goku train is extended in the anime, adding in a new character named Papoi, whom the South Kai claims could beat Goku. This character is mentioned in that scene in the manga, but he doesn't appear. Toyotaro would later draw Papoi as having arrived a little bit too late to participate in the Otherworld tournament. Vegeta also makes Trunks the promise to take him to a theme park if he can get a punch in on him, a promise he wouldn't fulfill until episode 2 of Dragon Ball Super. In this scene, he also calls it a Super Saiyan bargain sale, a line he would use again in Dragon Ball Daima when referring to Super Saiyan 4. Toriyama has clarified that Vegeta has never been to a bargain sale, since of course Bulma is rich, and instead he just learned about it on TV. I wonder what kind of shows Vegeta watches. Episode 208. The amazing scene where Goten has a tearful first meeting with Goku is actually exclusive to the anime. In the manga, Goku points out Goten, who's hiding behind Chi-Chi, but Piccolo interrupts them and says that they have to hurry. Goten in the manga overall seems a lot more shy and scared around Goku, with a few more panels of him glancing at him. Goten doesn't really open up, cry, and hug Goku until chapter 477, when Goku leaves back to Otherworld. Videl's mom is also mentioned in the English dub of this episode. She was a singer named Miguel, with her name coming from the archangel Michael. Get it? A marriage between a devil and an angel? Videl herself has a name that's a rearrangement of devil, keeping up with her father's naming scheme. Episode 209. The Ginyu Frog makes another cameo appearance, which I had totally forgotten about. Honestly, I didn't remember him being such a recurring character. It's kind of charming. And just for fun, these are all the scores for the punching machine. The highest score out of everyone is Android 18 with 774, but of course they were all holding back. Except for Vegeta. The punching machine has appeared in a few Dragon Ball video games, with what I think is the most memorable one being Raging Blast, where you play as Videl. Episode 210. Akira Toriyama's avatar, Toribot, can be seen on the upper left of the stands as the Z-Fighters start to watch Mr. Satan's film. So nice of him to attend both the Otherworld tournament and this one. The start of the film is a parody of the Toei opening logo we can see in all the original Z films, and the end credits list the actors as those responsible behind the scenes. Director Mitsuo Hashimoto, assistant production manager Kazumi Fujioka, animation supervisor Yukio Ebizawa, and many more. The Kai Final Chapters version of the film had the guys from Team 4-Star voice the characters, though this was eventually changed and removed. C-U-N-H-F-I-L! Episode 211. Ikose and Hidasa. The two annoying brothers Goten and Trunks fight during the tournament have actually recently made a new appearance in Dragon Ball Super Chapter 104, training under Mr. Satan at his dojo. Looks like their loss didn't deter any martial arts dreams. I should also mention that the tournament arena has been completely remodeled and expanded, and the surrounding town has been rebuilt, since it was all destroyed by Piccolo Jr. Although this new arena only appears in this arc, it's actually the most commonly used in video games, simply because of how much space there is compared to the last one. Much more fitting for flight characters, although the Budokai series makes something of a combination of both versions of the arena. The Dragon Ball Z New Year's Show. Between episodes 211 and 212, a recap special called Looking Back at It All, the Dragon Ball Z Year-End Show, was aired, featuring Goku teleporting to Earth from Otherworld to spend New Year's with his family. Together, they recall the Cell Games and the Otherworld tournament, ending the special all dressed up and telling the audience to look forward to the Adult Tournament Division coming next year. Episode 212. In this episode, Goten fires his first Kamehameha, mispronouncing it as Kame-Kameha, and almost blowing away half the arena. Even Trunks knows how to pronounce it correctly. But for whatever reason, the English dub missed out on the pronunciation, and Goten actually just pronounces it correctly. This has been fixed in video games and in Kai. I also want to mention that Trunks is a huge cheater, breaking every single rule set prior to the fight. He uses his left arm, he goes Super Saiyan, and even uses Ki Blast 2 times. I also own an animation cell of this episode. Episode 213. In this episode, we're introduced to Shin and Kibito, the Supreme Kai and his assistant. Even before Daima, we had quite a bit of information about his origins, but Daima did greatly expand on it. Shin's original name was Nahare, and he is the brother of Degesu and Arinsu. They're all members of the Glint race, who originate from trees in the second demon world. Although they're all technically genderless, they do present as female or male. Kibito is an older Glint who serves as Shin's attendant, and has a particular dislike for mortals. So much so that in the manga of Dragon Ball Super, Shin's first idea as who could be Goku Black was Kibito. Episode 214. In the dub, Piccolo says to Krillin that destiny is not something you can control, as he prays. But this is actually changed from Japanese, where Krillin was praying to God, and Piccolo reminds him that God is Dende. This was likely due to censorship, which is also the reason why Dende and Kami are given the title of Guardian of Earth, rather than literally what Kami means: God. Likewise in Japanese, Trunks tells Mighty Mass that there's a girl who wants to talk to him, while in the dub, he says that someone just wants to fight him. Episode 215. Piccolo and Shin enter the ring. In the tournament, Piccolo goes by the name Ma Jr., just like he did in the 23rd World Tournament, with the explanation this time being so that no one freaks out if they hear the name Piccolo. But this is a little weird, since last time he used the name Ma Jr., he still blew up an entire town, and he's not exactly trying to look any different. Either way, no one seems to remember this, except for the announcer. The legendary manga guidebook claims that Shin's power is similar to Goku's during the Cell Games, while the Daizenshu mentions that he's far above Piccolo. Episode 216. Videl is the first character, and the only character, we see trigger an elimination by killing their opponent, though it's only temporary as everyone thinks she broke his neck and killed him. I also haven't gotten to point it out, but the English dub gives Killa this insane voice.
Man, I tell you that, man, I've been taught I woke you up like a duckhammer.
Episode 217. This episode is one of the most violent beatdowns in Dragon Ball, and also one of the most censored because of it. Although the anime version is pretty bad, it does censor one thing, since in the manga, Videl loses several teeth, which just doesn't happen in the anime. The anime also reinterprets the scene where Spopovich fires something at Videl, from a weak invisible attack to a literal Ki Blast cannon. Episode 218. This episode gives us our first real look at the previous World Tournament, the 24th, which happened just a few days before the androids attacked. In it, Mr. Satan was declared as the world champion, though it is a little weird that there was 7 years between the last one and this one, since before it was every 3 or 5 years. But the tournament is more popular than ever now, with the prize being changed from 500,000 zeni to 10 million. In the manga, we never see anything about the 24th World Tournament. It's only alluded to when Killa talks about Spopovich, and we see him with his long, luscious hair. Also, and I find this really strange, this was the episode with the highest rating share in Dragon Ball Z, with a total of 27.5 in Japan. I guess people really wanted to see Gohan kill Spopovich. Episode 219. In this episode, Gohan gets his energy stolen by Spopovich and Yamu, placing it all in a Kili collecting receptacle. Kili is a unit of measuring power, which, according to V-Jump, 1 Kili unit is equal to 50,000 power level. But there's no way this can be right, since Dabra says that a Kili of 200 to 300 is what's needed to destroy a planet. To put it into perspective, 300 Kili is equal to 15 million power level, but Frieza could easily destroy Planet Vegeta in his first form, with a power level of only 530,000. Episode 220. The Majins were brutal in the manga, where we can see a whole family mutilated near Babidi's ship. So of course this was heavily censored in the anime. And although Spopovich's death is still pretty gruesome, we get to see a lot more of the aftermath in the manga. Episode 221. The Z fighters enter Babidi's spaceship to challenge the Majins, and the first one up to bat is Pui Pui. His name comes from Chin Chin Pui Pui, which is a Japanese saying said as a charm to kids when they hurt themselves. Something like a mom kissing a bruise to make you feel better. Pui Pui is from planet Zune, a world we later see being invaded by Moro's forces in Dragon Ball Super. Many members of his race are also added into the anime as Babidi's minions, though a couple do appear as faraway silhouettes in the manga as well. Speaking of which, the English manga changes Pui Pui's name to Pocus to make it more relatable to magic puns in English. Hocus Pocus. He is very proud of his world having 10 times the gravity of Earth, and he was even used as an April Fool's bit in Dragon Ball Legends, where it became Dragon Ball Pui Pui, and he managed to beat down Vegetto and fuse Zamasu. Episode 222. The title card for this episode shows a map of Babidi's spaceship, which is taken from chapter 450 of the manga. There we see a detailed layout. The ship has an entrance on the top above the surface, with the bridge and the rest of the ship hidden underground. There are 4 levels total from top to bottom, with Babidi's conference room on the 5th level, containing Buu's sphere beneath it, with all the energy being collected into said room. On the left tower, we find the meditation room, Babidi's room, and Dabora's room. On the right, we can find rooms for Babidi's men, and the waiting room for the fighters. There are also 2 more entrances on the left and right. The dub, however, says that there's only 3 levels they must get through for whatever reason. Episode 223. This episode marks the first time in the entirety of Dragon Ball Z where Goku is shown to kill someone other than like a fish or something. This time, he kills Yakon. The last time we saw Goku end someone's life was against King Piccolo, and the next time he will do it will be Kid Buu. And just as a little fact, Yakon has 800 Kili and Super Saiyan Goku has 3000, so it's no wonder the battle ended the way it did. Episode 224. We find out in this episode that Kila was eliminated in the 2nd round of the last tournament, and Jewel in the final round against Mr. Satan. The previous tournament was also the introduction of the Junior Division, where Videl took home the gold, though they do get rid of the Junior Division by the time the end of Z happens. But it's reinstated in GT, I guess. There's also this guy here giving the stink eye to Ox King when he sits down. I just thought it was funny. Episode 225. In the manga, Android 18 manages to avoid and block every single one of Mighty Mask's attacks. She doesn't get touched once, and when they go Super Saiyan and they fire a blast, she ends things pretty quickly with a Kienzan. In the anime though, the kids do a lot better against her, actually getting a few hits in, and even continue to fight 18 as Super Saiyans after their cover is blown. The anime also has a continuity error, where although Goten and Trunks leave the stage without the Mighty Mask costume, by the next episode they still have it and they're taking it off over the city. Episode 226. This episode features the beginning to the match between Gohan and the Supreme Demon King Dabura. It was revealed in the Daizenshu databook that Babidi took control of Dabura on age 474, and the Buu Saga takes place on age 774, so he had him under his spell for 300 years. In the original Dragon Ball anime, we get our first mention of the Demon Realm during some filler. It's pretty unrelated to the one we know now, but Dokkan Battle tries to link them together by having Shula, Melee, and Gola appear and explain that they've been searching for their missing Demon King. Daima gives us a different view at the Demon Realm, showing that Dabura is the successor of Abura, his father. One more thing before I move on. The promise Mr. Satan makes to Android 18 about paying her for letting him win is followed up in the opening of Bio Broly, where she goes to his house to shake the money out of him. Episode 227. The topic of if Gohan was a Super Saiyan 2 during the fight against Dabura has been a heated one for a long time. Some argue that Gohan isn't Super Saiyan 2 because it's the only way for Vegeta's comment about him being weaker than he was during the Cell games would make sense. Daisenshu 7 does say that Gohan was a Super Saiyan 2 in the fight. However, Daisenshu 2 says otherwise, mentioning that Buu Saga's Super Saiyan 2 Gohan only appears in volume 37. And Toriyama doesn't really draw any lightning for Gohan in this fight, something he is fairly consistent about around this time. I don't think there's an actual definitive answer, especially when guidebooks themselves contradict each other. Episode 228. Majin Vegeta makes his appearance in this episode, becoming one of Vegeta's most iconic forms. Of course, we widely know him as Majin Vegeta, mostly because of video games and the fandom, but he's been given many names over the years. Games like Xenoverse 2 and the Dragon Ball Super card game have started to refer to him as Prince of Destruction Vegeta, which is actually what he's referred to as in the Japanese title card. Other characters who are taken over by Babidi in Heroes and the like are given similar titles, like King or Agent of Destruction. Episode 229. Some people believe that it's the push from Babidi's magic that allowed Vegeta to turn into a Super Saiyan 2, but this isn't actually the case. Both the Super Exciting Guide and the Daizenshu describe Vegeta as having trained his way into Super Saiyan 2, and not because of the Majin power-up. Additionally, because Goku threatened Shin in this episode, he got eerily close to killing the God of Destruction Beerus, since there's a secret link only known to a few between the God of Destruction and their Supreme Kai. If one of them dies, so does the other. This is why in the Goku Black arc, Zamasu chose Trunks' timeline, since Shin died during his Majin Buu conflict, and because of it, Beerus was dead too. Black would go on to kill every single Kaioshin to get to their God of Destruction. Episode 230. This legendary fight is actually only around like 4 pages in the manga, and most of the chapters are actually dedicated to the stuff going on with Buu and Gohan, or dialogue between characters. So the majority of this well-known fight is all actually thanks to the animation staff, who added a bunch of pretty interesting material. Funny enough, part of the real manga fight was adapted, but in a very strange way, for a gummy commercial in their base forms. This fight is also the first time either of them is shown in Super Saiyan 2, and it marks 200 episodes since the two rivals first fought. Episode 231. Babidi tells Shin that, "I'm not going to be killed by the likes of you the way Papa was." Though he is said to be the son of Babidi, Toriyama clarified in the full-color manga release that Babidi is instead a doppelganger created by the original Bibidi, who divided himself when he needed an extra hand. This would also split their magic. But once the original Bibidi died, all the magic was left with Babidi. Toriyama had also explained that Buu was not created by the wizard, but existed since time immemorial. This has kind of been retconned by Daima, where it said that Bibidi requested help from Marba to form Buu. But I guess that's still before the creation of the universe, so maybe it still counts? Episode 232. This episode marks the first appearance of Majin Buu. His name comes from Cinderella, as the ending of the magic spell, Bibidi Babidi Buu. But this reference goes a long way, beyond just the 3 characters. As the song goes, Salagadula Mekikabura Bibidi Babidi Buu. Salaga is an avatar character from Dragon Ball Heroes. Kadula is a character from the Fusions manga. Mekikabura is one of the main antagonists from the Heroes franchise. And of course, Bibidi and Babidi are the wizards. I also want to mention the fantastic headbutt section of the fight, which was done by Tadayoshi Yamamoto, one of the biggest and longest lasting names in the franchise, being the character designer for the Buu Saga alongside Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru. He worked as an animation director for the majority of the Dragon Ball Z films until Broly, also working in Dragon Ball Super and continuing to work in the Dragon Ball Heroes promotional anime. Episode 233. The final few minutes of this episode feature Goku and Vegeta halting their battle because of the sudden wave of Buu's ki. For some bizarre reason, the start of the next episode shows this scene all over again, but instead animated by Lasthouse and Masayumi Uchiyama. And visually, it's a pretty massive step down from the gorgeous animation of the previous episode. It's always interesting to see when they do this. Episode 234. In this episode, Trunks accidentally shatters the Piccolo Stone, not realizing that it was really Piccolo. The next episode, when they are freed from the stone, Trunks goes to check on Piccolo and finds his body in pieces. But Piccolo shows up and explains that he can regenerate with just his head, a similar explanation to what Cell originally gives. But I guess that bits and pieces of Piccolo's body are still out there in the desert somewhere, if he just regenerated from his head. Though we never see actually someone die on screen from being shattered from stone, this technically isn't 100% true. In the Dragon Ball Super manga, future Trunks uses the Sea Sword in battle against the Bora. So Trunks drops the Sea Sword and it shatters, killing the old Kai in the process. Poor guy, he just gets stuck there and dies. Episode 235. Majin Buu's Candy Beam, or I guess the Cookie Beam in this episode, was inspired by Akira Toriyama's third editor. One day, he brought over chocolates to Toriyama's house, and while Toriyama wasn't eating them, he caught his editor eating them himself. In fact, Majin Buu in general was inspired by Takeda, marking yet another villain inspired by his editor. Episode 236. The piercing blast Vegeta uses on Buu is one of my favorite attacks in the series. It's been given various names, including the Final Impact Impact, Atomic Blast, Baryon Ray, and Atomic Flash. In Dragon Ball Heroes, the attack evolves into Double Atomic Flash, and Gogeta even gets the Atomic Kamehameha. Episode 237. The anime and the Kansenban release of Vegeta's Sacrifice unfortunately omit Vegeta's poem from the title page. Although short, I think it's really impactful, especially since Toriyama admits that he never likes to make things melancholic. The poem says, "My life fell like dew, disappears like dew. All this world is dream after dream." It's a reference to Toyotomi Hideyoshi's famous death poem, which is exactly the same, but the "this world" in Vegeta's is replaced with Naniwa, which is where Hideyoshi was from. Episode 238. It's revealed in episode 8 of Daima that Dr. Arinsu, Shin's sister and a scientist from the Demon Realm, is actually present at this time, and she quickly rushes in after Vegeta's sacrifice, swiping some of Buu's bits. She would go on to take these pieces and combine them with Cyberman seeds, with the help of the Dark Witch Marba, in order to create two new Majins, Du and Ku. She's actually tried making some before, but they were failures. Episode 239. Krillin and Piccolo take Goten and Trunks to the lookout in this episode, and they meet up with Dende. However, Dende is no longer wearing the Kami outfit from the beginning of the arc, and instead is just wearing clothes similar to the ones he wore as a kid, and he doesn't look quite as old anymore. This change is worsened as the arc continues, where Toriyama just straight up forgets about the redesign and the aged up Dende. So by the end of it, he's a kid once again. He is made a little bit taller in Super, but didn't look like a proper teenager again until Superhero. But the idea of him wearing the Kami outfit seems to have been completely ditched. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot even decided to remain faithful and shrink Dende too. Episode 240. The Dragon team have finally collected the Dragon Balls and summoned Shenron, wishing for all those killed that day to be brought to life, except for the bad ones. But Goku teleports in and stops them from making any more wishes. The curious thing about this wish is that it creates a plot hole, since once the team are taken to the lookout, Goku informs everyone that Gohan and Vegeta are both dead. But Goku was aware that the wish was made, and common sense would mean that, at the very least, Gohan would be brought back to life, since he's obviously not a bad guy. So everyone mourns Gohan, and no one tries to look for him, despite the fact that they just revived everyone. But it is worth noting that since Gohan is at the Kaioshin realm, the people who can sense energy probably couldn't feel him either. Episode 241. In the manga, it's never revealed who rats out Goten and Trunks to Babidi when he sends the telepathic message across the earth. But in the anime, the mother of Idasa and Ikosa is brought back up as the one who tells Babidi about the kids and where Trunks lives. There's also a weird cameo of Clint Eastwood's character from Dirty Harry. He is one of Toriyama's favorite people to parody, since he used him in one of his first manga, Mysterious Rain Jack, and as the model for Kurikinton Soramame in Dr. Slump. Episode 242. In this episode, Goten and Trunks prepare to begin their fusion training. But before that, the two of them as Super Saiyans take on Mr. Popo. Somehow, he's able to actually hold his own against them for a little bit, and doesn't just get one shot. Even 18 struggle against them more, so just how strong is he? Besides that though, Toriyama revealed something interesting regarding the fusion, stating, "The series of movements leading up to the Ha are important for syncing two people up, and also concentrating their minds. But once you get really good at it, it's possible to merge with just the Ha." Episode 243. Gohan pulls out the legendary Sea Sword. Weirdly enough, in the original manga, the Sea Sword was one of the only times Z is used in a meaningful way. Of course, we know that the legend of the Sea Sword's power came from the fact that the Elder Kai was trapped within. Although we only see Gohan do it here, clearly inspired by the legend of Excalibur, he isn't the only one to pull it out. In the future timeline of the Dragon Ball Super manga, Trunks is the one to pull it out, and in Dragon Ball Z Shin Budokai 2, future Gohan is brought back from Otherworld, and he's the one to pull it out, eventually even getting Ultimate in this game's version of future Trunks' Buu arc. Episode 244. Goku has to get Buu's attention while Trunks gets the Dragon Radar. It's kinda weird because Goku could probably just teleport Trunks there and back, but he clearly wanted to see Buu for himself. But did you know that the Dragon Radar Trunks is getting right now is not the one made by Bulma? The original Dragon Radar was stolen by General Blue. Goku then landed in Penguin Village, where Senbei, the titular Dr. Slump from Toriyama's past series, tries to fix it, but it's way too advanced. Instead, Turbo, his floating genius baby, takes apart a plane and uses it to remake the radar. So the one we've been using ever since, all throughout Z, is a replica made in a crossover. Episode 245. Super Saiyan 3 makes its first appearance. Goku is not only the one to discover this form, but also the one to name all the states. It's weird to think about, but the advanced stages wouldn't be known as Super Saiyan 2 and 3 unless Goku gave them those names right here. Toriyama had different ideas for the form, including just a new shape for the traditional Super Saiyan hair, which seems to have inspired Vegeta's design in Daima, and there was also a version with a tail. Episode 246. This is the first battle with Super Saiyan 3, becoming one of the most divisive and popular forms in the franchise, a form given to a lot of characters in extended media. Goku, Gotenks, Vegeta, and Majin Buu of all people are the only ones we see obtain it in the anime, although games and other things give nearly every Saiyan Super Saiyan 3. We've seen Gogeta, Vegetto, Broly, Bardock, both present and future Gohan and Trunks, Gohanks, Raditz, Nappa, Cumber, Shallot, Beat, Note, the Xeno avatars, even Roshi, Krillin, Puar, Yamcha, and Kid Goku in Dragon Ball SD. Episode 247. Buu uses a magazine as inspiration for his new face, taking on the look of Barry Kahn, a movie star who later appears in Dragon Ball Super as an actor playing the Great Saiyaman, who ends up being possessed by an alien and Gohan has to take him down. Episode 248. Goku continues teaching the kids fusion, but has to leave this episode. Akira Toriyama actually came up with a fusion dance while watching TV. He already planned on having dumb poses as part of an important technique, and came up with a Shon part of fusion while watching a performance on TV, since it was the performer's signature pose. Episode 249. In this episode, Majin Buu performs a miracle by allowing a blind boy to see. In the English dub, he's named Tommy. But his story doesn't end here. In the video game Dragon Ball Online, which had oversight from Toriyama, the boy goes on to become rich, and even names himself after the monster who saved him, going by Mr. B. He becomes a champion for the future Majin race, which begins to pop up after the series ends, opening up Buu World, a theme park that employs mostly Majins. Also, we see Krillin and Piccolo showing the kids the fusion dance. Even though they don't fuse here, Toriyama did draw the result, Krillin, as an example for a fan fusion contest. I have a video all about the contest here if you want to learn more. Episode 250. Technically, this is the first episode where Beerus is mentioned. When the old Kai is freed from the sword, he mentions being trapped in there for millions of years by someone who wasn't as strong as Buu. Toriyama explained in Psycho Jump that every 1,000 years, the Kais and Gods of Destruction hold a meeting, and in one of these meetings, Beerus and the Supreme Kai got into an argument, and Beerus sealed him away in a sword. So this has a few implications. One is that Beerus not only has swords, but he can lock people within them, and two, Buu was potentially stronger than Beerus at one point. Episode 251. In the manga version of the scene where Goten and Trunks try and fail the fusion over and over again, there's a really funny joke where Krillin demolishes the fourth wall, calling out Toriyama for copying the same page, so he wouldn't have to redraw it. Toriyama then pops up and says that he doesn't have to get paid for this page. This, of course, doesn't actually happen in the anime, sadly. Episode 252. Mr. Satan and Majin Buu start to slowly become friends. At this point in time, Akira Toriyama had actually been trying to end Dragon Ball for a while, but to encourage him to continue, his Buu Saga editor gave him a lot more freedom than normal. He just wanted Toriyama to have fun with the final arc, leading into stuff like Mr. Satan having a much bigger role, befriending Buu, and helping save the world. Episode 253. Toriyama has mentioned that this part of the series, specifically the area around Babadi's ship, and seemingly the area where Buu sets up his home, were based on Africa, as Toriyama was enthralled by pictures in an Africa landscape book. This is pretty obvious when you visit the Majin areas in Dragon Ball Online. Speaking of, Mr. Satan and Buu adopt a puppy. The dog's name is B, and he sticks around with Mr. Satan from here on out, appearing in the end of Z, Super, and GT. In Dragon Ball Online, B is remembered and immortalized as statues in the starting home of the Majin race, B Village. Episode 254. In this episode, Majin Buu splits himself in two, between good and evil. But this is actually not the only time he does something like this. Well, kinda. In expanded material, way into the future, Majin Buu finds Mr. Satan's dirty books, reading Bob and Margaret's Forbidden Games, the same book Roshi used to teach Krillin and Goku how to read. Afterwards, Buu realizes that he wanted a partner just like humans have, splitting part of himself off to mold a wife for himself. Together, they would take little pieces and shower them with a love beam, creating an entirely new race of Majins, which begin to populate the world. A version of this scene is shown in Xenoverse, and it's the origin of the Majin race in Dragon Ball Online. Episode 255. Super Buu is born after pure evil Buu absorbs Fat Buu. There's always debate about Super Buu's power in comparison to the other Majins, but the Daizenshu explains that Buu's power greatly increases after absorbing Fat Buu, while Dragon Ball Forever explains that the Majin got weaker once Fat Buu was ripped away from inside of him. Even Takao Koyama, the anime's producer and writer, has claimed that Super Buu, Gohan absorbed, is the mightiest Majin of them all. He also has a bunch of what-if absorptions, such as Frieza, Cell, and Vegeta, even Tien and Yamcha, which actually ends up making him weaker according to VJump. Episode 256. In this episode, Super Buu kills the remaining humans on Earth, making Majin Buu as a whole the single character to kill the most humans in Dragon Ball Z. Although it is worth noting that Fat Buu killed most of them prior, as the manga states he killed 80% of the population. So Super Buu is just getting rid of the rest, and is only later outdone in Super, and Res F I guess, by Frieza. Zeno does end up killing everyone in Future Trunks' reality, but even Black left more humans alive than Super Buu, as they managed to survive underground. The only ones he meant to spare were the people on the lookout, Mr. Satan and B. The unintended survivors were Tien, Chaozu, Yajirobe, and Korin, although everyone is killed later on, except for Mr. Satan, B, and Dende. It's worth noting that Goku and Vegeta are both dead at this point, and Gohan is at the Supreme Kai's. Episode 257. The time chamber works weird and different from before in this episode. When we're first introduced to it, it's clearly shown as a different dimension where Goku couldn't sense anything outside of it. But now, Piccolo can talk telepathically to Goten and Trunks. Them talking should also be at different speeds because of the difference in time flow. Goten and Trunks talking to Piccolo should be really fast, while Piccolo talking to the kids should be very slow. We also see Goten, Trunks, Piccolo, and Super Buu enter the time chamber at once, though a lot of this can be explained away, such as the original rule being in place because there was only enough food for 2 people to last a year, and the fact that in Super it's explained that Dende can tweak how the time chamber works and even upgrading it to remove restrictions. Episode 258. There's a strange choice in this episode. Up to this point, Super Buu had been depicted with white eyes, but when Gotenks lands a punch across Super Buu's face, his eyes change to red with no explanation or acknowledgement, and they stay red for the rest of the series. The Kai version of this episode actually adds a transition from white to red eyes, implying that they change out of fury. Episode 259. Akira Toriyama has mentioned a few times that Gotenks vs Super Buu is one of his favorite battles, behind King Piccolo vs Goku, although he has also mentioned Tien vs Goku as his favorite. Additionally, he said that 2 of Gotenks' moves are in his top 3, the Super Buu Buu volleyball attack and the Kamikaze Ghost attack. The number 1 spot, of course, is the Kamehameha. Episode 260. Super Buu escapes the time chamber and kills everyone outside, though this shouldn't be possible, since the time within the chamber is so fast that Gotenks should have technically been able to escape well before Buu had any chance to do anything. Likewise, through the fight in the time chamber, the Z fighters outside are seen discussing what's going on, which, again, shouldn't be possible, since the fight should have only lasted seconds in the outside world. Though this could be another case of Dende having changed the time chamber for whatever reason. Master Roshi also dies in this episode, a very sad coincidence since it's also the last episode with his original voice actor, Kohei Miyauchi, who passed away a few months before the episode aired, with his final line being yelling out Krillin's name before Buu gets to him. Hiroshi Masuoka would take over the role of Roshi until Kai, where Masaharu Sato continues to play the part to this day. Episode 261. The Super Buu Buu volleyball attack used in this episode is a move where Gotenks traps his enemy within the Galactic Donuts and uses him as a volleyball. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, Gotenks does this move by himself, but if you have Piccolo in the same team as you, he joins in just like in this episode. Weirdly enough, this is one of 2 volleyball-based moves Gotenks uses. The other is Tien's volleyball fist, which he uses in the special Yo Son Goku and His Friends Return. Gotenks seems to have a fascination with the older fighters' moves, since he also uses the Wolfang Fist in that special. Episode 262. In the original Japanese, Gohan tells Kibito that he wants to wear his father's gi into battle. Kibito says that it's the same color as the poop of the frogs on planet Popol, to which Gohan responds by saying that it's the color of the Yamabuki Keria rosebush. As you can see here, this is in fact not the color of Goku's gi. Well, in the anime. In the manga, Toriyama specifies a few times that Goku's gi is in fact this golden yellow. Although Toriyama would sometimes follow the anime's color, we do see this more yellow version in many of his illustrations, and even Dragon Ball FighterZ eventually added a color palette closer to this. I personally prefer this. Gohan also only really wears Goku's gi while his father is dead. We see this in BoJack Unbound, The Future Timeline, and now here. The Super anime does break this by having him wear orange in the Tournament of Power, though in the manga he wears purple. Episode 263. Ultimate Gohan and Super Buu begin their battle. In universe, this form actually didn't have a name until fairly recently, in Dragon Ball Super manga chapter 102, where Goten calls Gohan's form Ultimate, since it never had a name beforehand. Gohan isn't a fan of the name, while the kids love it. Funny enough, Goten himself gets Ultimate in Dragon Ball Heroes. Episode 264. In the last bit of this episode, Buu gets ready to absorb the kids and Piccolo. The chapter that this is adapting has a Toriyama comment that mentions a certain international star says he wants to make a live-action Dragon Ball. It's not set in stone yet, but it might become a reality. He doesn't say who it is, but Toriyama has mentioned that he would have wanted Jackie Chan to play Goku. Toriyama and Jackie Chan did meet at one point, since the actor was a fan of Dr. Slump, and even included a Rayleigh in one of his films. Episode 265. There are a couple of references to important past scenes in Dragon Ball. When Gohan and Buu get ready to fight, they take on the iconic poses of Goku and Vegeta's first battle, and later they kick each other in the face just like in the finale of the first tournament. These are really cool, but the fight is actually pretty different in the manga, where Gohan is overwhelmed from the start thanks to Buu absorbing Gotenks and Piccolo. In the same week this episode aired, the Dragon Ball manga had its final chapter released in Shonen Jump. Episode 266. During the fight, Super Buu tortures Gohan by using the knowledge Piccolo has within him. Things like saying that Piccolo taught him better than this, and that his special beam cannon is stronger. The dub adds one extra thing, which I think is pretty cool, where Gohan tries to hide away from Buu only for the Majin to intercept him and say, direct quote Piccolo said to Gohan during the Nappa encounter. Also, both Goku and Vegeta return in this episode. Goku is revived by the old Kai giving him his life, while Vegeta was granted 1 day on Earth by King Yema. He should have gotten his body taken away and soul recycled, but Yema kept him around just in case things got worse with Buu. Episode 267. The original idea for the Potara earrings arose from necessity. Fusion Reborn was already in production, so Toriyama didn't want to use the fusion dance to combine Goku and Vegeta. So he decided to use the earrings he'd already been drawing as a new mystical item. The chapter before Vegeto's first appearance even calls him Gogeta, so maybe Toriyama, or the editorial, didn't realize that the fusion name was already taken. So when he showed up properly, Vegetto was born. But if you want to learn more, I have a video specifically about this. Episode 268. The anime adds a scene where Dende heals Tien, but for some reason, Tien just kinda disappears after that, and we never see him again until the Spirit Bomb. In the manga, he just stays knocked out. There are also two imaginary fusions Goku thinks of, the anime original Denku and Gotan, or Gokul in English. He's been in quite a few Dragon Ball games, including Heroes and Dokkan Battle. In Budokai 2, he also has an alternate design where he looks more like Mr. Satan. Episode 269. In this entire episode, Vegeta fights Super Buu in base form, whereas in the manga, Vegeta transforms immediately into Super Saiyan. The Potara fusion of Goku and Vegeta is known as Vegetto in Japanese, usually with an E and a second T instead of an I. This is a name formed by blending Vegeta and Kakaroto, the Japanese form of Kakarot. But since we dropped the to part in English, the Viz manga release chose to translate the fusion name as Vegirot. Episode 270. This episode has one of my favorite moves in the series, the Spirit Sword. Video games like Dragon Ball Heroes have evolved that move into the Spirit Excalibur. The anime also gives us an exclusive look at what Krillin and Yamcha were doing in Otherworld, as they train at the Grand Kaio's world. This is the only time where Krillin meets King Kai, and is the only Z fighter not to train under him in the manga canon. The next time King Kai would be with any of the Z fighters besides Goku is in the 2009 Shonen Jump special, Yo Son Goku and His Friends Return, where he visits Earth. Episode 271. In these episodes, Dabura has been in heaven with the girls. Although these scenes are anime only, him being sent to heaven is mentioned in the manga. While visiting King Yama in Otherworld, Goku learns that Dabura was recently judged, reasoning that a demon like Dabura would actually enjoy hell. He regrets his past actions and even helps Bulma, Chi-Chi, and Videl search for Gohan. There's even a Dokkan battle card depicting this version of Dabura teaming up with Pikkon in Otherworld. Episode 272. This is the final episode with Vegetto before he defuses. Vegeta's original Japanese voice actor, Ryo Horikawa, has explained that playing Vegetto was one of the hardest things he had to do while recording Dragon Ball Z. Him and Masako Nozawa recorded the entire thing together at once, and only planned out where to breathe ahead of time. He credits his and Nozawa's long history of teamwork in the series as the success of Vegetto. Episode 273. I guess Vegetto getting absorbed really annoyed people, since this was the lowest viewed episode of Dragon Ball Z in Japan. Vegetto defusing here has been explained in a few different ways, including the gases within Buu undoing the fusion, which is explained in Dragon Ball Daima. Then there's also the Potara earrings having a time limit for the non-Kaioshin in Super. This episode is the first to use music from movie 12, Fusion Reborn, meaning we just barely missed getting to use music from his counterpart. Episode 274. Goku and Vegeta continue their adventures within Buu, where they face evil copies of their friends. The Chosenshu mentions that these copies are just as strong as the originals, while also mentioning that within Buu, Goku and Vegeta have 1/100th of their normal power, while Buu himself is immortal within his own body. Episode 275. Goku and Vegeta combine their attacks on one another to fire a combination of the Kamehameha and the Final Flash, an attack that would later be given to Vegetto in games and in Super as the final Kamehameha. Vegetto never uses this attack in the show itself. It was instead made up for the video game Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22, where it's originally given to Gogeta, but Vegeta would get it soon after, becoming his signature attack, and one of the few moves from games to be adapted into the anime. Episode 276. Kid Buu is born. He was the original version of the Majin who terrorized the Demon Realm and killed the Supreme Kais of Universe 7. Though Toriyama has explained that Buu has been around since time immemorial, Daima explains that Marba and Bibidi created Buu in the Demon Realm. Toriyama has also said that Bibidi didn't really create Buu, he only knew the spell to bring him forth. When asked what the spell was, he said, "Sorry if I summoned Majin Buu in your house." Episode 277. In Super, we find out that Universe 7 is a little weird compared to the others. We had 5 Kaioshin active at once, one for each cardinal direction, and 1 Grand Kaioshin. Every other universe we've visited since only has 1 Kaioshin, who is soul-linked to the God of Destruction. Episode 278. In this episode, Kibito Shin agrees to take Dende to Namek in order to use the Dragon Balls, but the old Kai tries to stop them, saying that they mess with the natural order of things. This is expanded upon in Dragon Ball GT, where the Dragon Balls become polluted by negative energy and give birth to the Shadow Dragons, to which the old Kai says, "I told you so." The old Kai also mentions that he told the Namekians long ago that they weren't allowed to use the Dragon Balls to affect other planets. He could have possibly already been aware of the Dragon Balls and their abilities beforehand, thanks to the Demon Realm Dragon Balls introduced in Daima, said to be the original set. Episode 279. In my opinion, one of the best episodes in the entire series, and maybe my favorite fight, Super Saiyan 2 Goku vs Kid Buu, was animated by Studio Cockpit, with animation supervisor Keisuke Matsunaga at the helm. It's an incredible fight, and almost entirely filler since Goku only fights Kid Buu in Super Saiyan 3 in the manga. The Kai version of this battle tries to elevate it by adding a new insert song, Let It Burn. Since the Buu Saga sadly lacked insert songs, it was pretty cool to see here. Episode 280. This is a very Vegeta-focused episode, as he acknowledges Goku as number 1. There has always been a rumor that Toriyama hated Vegeta, but this isn't really true. Toriyama originally envisioned Vegeta as any regular old bad guy, who would just die at the end of the arc. But he became more and more popular. In 1995, after the manga concluded, Toriyama explained, with Vegeta, well, I don't like him all that much, but he was extremely helpful to have around. However, as time went on, it seems like Vegeta grew on him. He ranked Vegeta alongside Piccolo as some of his favorite characters, saying, "A pair who never say anything unless they have to, and have an air of aloof superiority. Their coolness is the real deal." And in 2014, he mentions that he wanted to have Vegeta be the star of the next movie. Sadly, Sadly, this didn't come to be, but it's clear that over the years, he really did warm up to Vegeta. As he said in 2013, he has a well-defined character, as a resentful presence with both strong pride and a desire to get even stronger. So I could draw him without difficulty. The character would sort of move on its own. It was fun to draw people like Piccolo, Vegeta, and Mr. Satan. Episode 281. Vegeta steps out to fight Kid Buu as Goku gathers energy. I really love this whole final fight. It's my favorite section in the entire series. Despite Goku letting Vegeta buy him time, Toriyama has explained that all he wanted was to selflessly fight alone against Buu. Toriyama explained in the full color release of the final volume, there's just one enemy. Despite there being so many people over on his side, it's a bit cowardly, isn't it? You can tell from his final line, from the battle with Majin Buu, that Goku's true desire is to fight one-on-one. Episode 282. Kid Buu has to force himself to spit out Fat Buu so he can finally attack Mr. Satan. Although we've never seen Fat Buu be the one to absorb people and take their traits, in the official comedic remake, Dragonball SD, there's a bonus chapter where Fat Buu isn't absorbed by Evil Buu, and instead, he just goes to the lookout and attacks. There, he absorbs all of the Z fighters, and we see many different versions of this Buu, including Krillin, Yamcha, 18, Roshi, and even Puar. This Majin Buu Puar absorbed ends up running into Neko Majin, pointing out how they look alike. Also, in the manga, B is taken by the Kais, while in the anime, he stays with Mr. Satan. Episode 283. In this episode, Vegeta tells Dende to wish for every good person who died the day of the tournament to be revived. But the old Kai is also revived. This implies that it affected people outside of Earth. So like, did everyone who died for any reason in Universe 7 get revived too? This has even weirder implications in the anime, where Kid Buu went around blowing up other planets before getting to the world of the Kais. So, did the people in those planets get revived in the middle of space and die? In the manga, Kid Buu teleports to the world of the Kais immediately after destroying Earth. It's also a bit weird since evil people are still around after the wish, so maybe they just weren't considered as evil as Babidi and Dabura, since that's quite a high bar. Episode 284. This is the first episode with a Spirit Bomb since episode 94, where Goku finally hit Frieza with a Spirit Bomb, meaning there have been 190 episodes since its last appearance. Episode 285. There is a ton of cameos in this episode. Characters from past adventures who give energy to Goku are Upa, Bora, Korin, Yajirobe, Android 17, Tien, Chaozu, Snow, Android number 8, Lunch, Nam, Giran, Mummy Man, Devil Man, Sharpener, Erasa, King Fury, along with the rest of humanity and the Z Fighters. This is also Launch's first cameo since the Frieza arc, and though it is anime only, she was supposed to appear in the manga, as originally, Toriyama had planned to have her in place of 17, but changed his mind. Episode 286. The final Genkidama push and thumbs up scene was fairly short in the original manga, and kinda cramped to keep along with the 14-ish pages Toriyama had been doing, but thankfully for the Kanzenban release of the manga, Toriyama expanded on the ending a little bit by splitting the final thumbs up page into a few different ones. One for the more epic defeat of Buu, then one for the quiet aftermath as Goku powers down, and the last one for the thumbs up in celebration, where Vegeta says, "What's up with that look? I really can't stand you," with a smile. The anime has its own expansions on the ending, with plenty of flashbacks and Vegeta shooting a thumbs up back to Goku. Episode 287. In this episode, peace returns to the universe, but the anime has a bit of filler before the end of the story. After wishing for everyone to forget about Majin Buu's atrocities, Buu walks around the city and beats up a Street Fighter in a single hit. A direct callback to Kid Goku having a very similar encounter with a Street Fighter when he first visited West City. This is also the first episode with Great Saiyaman 2, Videl's superhero alter ego. It was first introduced in Wrath of the Dragon 5 months prior. Goten and Trunks also fuse while naked in this episode, and Gotenks doesn't get the Metamorian outfit, implying that the vest is made up of the clothes of the fusees, and not just generated by magic. Law of equivalent exchange, I guess. Episode 288. The outfit Goten wears in this episode is a spin on an outfit Goku wore briefly after defeating the Red Ribbon Army. This filler episode is the last one before the events of Daima and Super take place, since the next 3 episodes jump ahead in time 10 years. As the series was coming to an end, this episode serves as a bookend of sorts, with Goku being away in nature and taking care of animals. There's even a flashback to Goku and Grandpa Gohan's time together. Episode 289. This episode has a bunch of Easter eggs. When Trunks goes to Gohan's place, there's a VHS tape next to the TV, named Bird's Eye, a reference to Toriyama's Bird Studio. The TV show showing the weather, misspelled without an A, is playing an instrumental version of the vocal theme from Wrath of the Dragon. Gohan's books include a book named Areli, the main character of Dr. Slump, and a book named Jump, a reference to Shonen Jump. He also brings down 3 books by real-life scientist Charles Darwin, known for his theory of evolution. Gohan's wedding photo is also notably different from the one in Super, and so is his house, though they could have just moved after Superhero. Gohan also has art in his house of Namek and the Kaioshin realm, both places where he got his potential unleashed. At the tournament, we can also spot someone that looks like Dr. Mashirito, Toribot, and even Tiger Mask. Episode 290. Every episode introducing the legacy of Goku in Z has had I am as part of the title, such as I am Gohan, I am Pan, and now I am Oob. Sadly, Goten is the odd one out. There are also more callbacks to the original Dragon Ball here, such as Oob entering the tournament to win money for his village, just like Nam, and Goku asking Buu to rearrange the numbers, just like Tien and Chaozu. The chapter this episode is adapting ended with a little blurb from Toriyama announcing that something special was going to happen next chapter, but not to get your hopes up. This is kind of insane, since the next chapter, the series would just end. Not many people knew this was happening, even behind the scenes. Dragon Ball was an industry all on its own, where hundreds of people were employed, so it was a big deal to end it. Of course, GT was already in production at this point, and unlike the manga, where the story does end, the original airing of this episode and the next actually have a preview for Dragon Ball GT, so people already knew something else was coming. Episode 291. This episode marks the end of many things. Of course, this was the end of not just Dragon Ball Z, but also Toriyama's original 42-volume epic. This was also the last time Shunsuke Kikuchi's music would be used in the series. He'd been composing from episode 1 of the original series, and even before then with Dr. Slump. Akihito Tokunaga would take over in Dragon Ball GT. The Kai version of this episode plays Flow's Chala He Chala as an insert song, which I find a little weird since Chala He Chala was never used in Kai, but it does work. The Kanzenban release of this chapter also expanded the ending in a beautiful way. When Goku leaves with Oob, instead of just flying away, Goku stops to give Oob something, calling forth the Flying Nimbus, and flops him on top of it, saying that he knew he'd be able to ride it. Oob starts flying out of there at full speed back home, and as they fly, Goku can see his younger self flying alongside Oob, remembering that feeling of first stepping out into a larger world. Goku passes Oob, and they continue forth. The manga ends with a group shot of the Dragon Team, and Vegeta promising himself that sooner or later, he will defeat Goku. By changing the story in this way, Dragon Ball ends with Goku becoming Master Roshi, in a way, giving a young boy the Flying Nimbus, and taking him on as his new martial arts student. He's come full circle, though I wonder who got the power pole. Was it Oob, or maybe Pan got it? Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to Kamehameha that subscribe button. I am in the process of making the rest of the fact videos, so be on the lookout for those. And by the time this premieres, I should have the Dragon Ball Super Facts out already. And if you want more deep dives into Dragon Ball, be sure to check out my video on the complete power level list.